Welcome to my channel. In my channel, you can watch various type of fiction and fantasy audiobook. If you want more video like this, please subscribe my channel.
Marvel Comics. I'm not a god, I'm the man who outplays Doctor Doom. Part 1. Queens, New York, 6:30 p.m. Lin Yi was riding a second-hand electric scooter painted yellow, frantically ranting in his heart. It has been 7 days since I transmigrated to Marvel, and I haven't grown any other skills, but my delivery speed is almost fast enough to arm wrestle with the Flash. Others start by binding a system to slaughter everywhere, but I started by binding the less than takeout system greater than, risking my life with the overtime countdown every day. Lin Yi had transmigrated to Marvel for 7 days, with the standard identity of a Chinese American working stiff. However, his pockets were cleaner than his face, so he had no choice but to return to his old trade and take up the business of delivering food. If you ask how he knew he transmigrated to the Marvel world, you would know too if you had a kid named Peter Parker living right downstairs, hey. Not to mention, it was truly a huge coincidence, the apartment Lin Yi rented happened to be right upstairs from Peter Parker's home. As a veteran Marvel fan who had worn out the trailer of Spider-Man, Brand New Day, Lin Yi guessed the current time point the moment he saw Peter Parker. It was precisely when Peter's identity was erased by Doctor Strange, and his spider genes began to secretly go out of control. Holding 2 cold beef burgers, Lin Yi climbed up to the 3rd floor in one breath. This order was placed by Peter Parker, and since it was right on the way, he would go back to rest after dropping it off. Panting, he stopped at the door and raised his hand to knock. Hello, your delivery has arrived. The door opened a crack, revealing half of a pale and slightly weary face. The young man had messy brown hair, faint dark circles under his eyes, and wore a washed-out hoodie. Peter Parker. Only this Peter was completely different from the talkative, sunny high schooler in Lin Yi's impression. No one remembered that he was Spider-Man. Aunt May was gone, and Uncle Ben had been gone for a long time. Former friends, lovers, and enemies had all forgotten his identity. He was trapped in Queens like an invisible person, working odd jobs to pay the rent while enduring the backlash of his spider genes slowly spinning out of control. To put it bluntly, the current Peter Parker was a complete loner. Thank you. Peter's voice was very low. When paying, he even rummaged through his pockets for a long time before scraping together the change to hand over. You're welcome. Lin Yi didn't look at him too much, took the money, and turned to go upstairs. Peter at this time was as alert as a frightened cat. Getting too close would only make him be regarded as someone with ill intentions. Returning to the rental apartment upstairs, Lin Yi first threw the delivery box into the corner, fished out a can of near-expiration cola from the refrigerator, gulped down a large mouthful, and collapsed into the creaking old sofa. In these 7 days, he had secretly observed this neighbor quite a bit. Peter left early and returned late every day, sometimes going to the convenience store for odd jobs, and sometimes going to construction sites to move cargo, living a tight life. Occasionally he would disappear for a few hours at night, and when he returned, his body always carried some injuries, yet no one ever cared to ask him a single question. The entire world had forgotten Peter Parker, leaving only himself to carry that responsibility and take beatings in places where no one could see. Come to think of it, it's quite miserable. Lin Yi smacked his lips. In web novels, this is called being tragic yet strong. In reality, this is called being a pure sucker. He originally planned to muddle through days by hiding. After all, having no superpowers in the Marvel Universe was purely cannon fodder. But plans couldn't keep up with changes. Just as he was preparing to soak a bowl of instant noodles for dinner, a loud bang of boom suddenly came from the distant street, followed by undulating screams. Lin Yi's heart skipped a beat. This commotion didn't sound like a regular street fight at all. He had just walked to the window wanting to take a look down when a crisp electronic sound suddenly rang out in his mind, almost scaring him into throwing away his instant noodle bucket. Detected that the host is in the Marvel Cinematic Universe Earth 616b, meeting the binding conditions. Marvel Iconic Scene Check-in System, officially activated. Current timeline. Opening stage of Spider-Man, Brand New Day. Novice gift pack has been issued. Peak human physical fitness, disposable web binding device ×2, meme amplification function permanently unlocked. Lin Yi was stunned for a full 3 seconds, and after reacting, he slapped the table in wild joy on the spot. System. I knew the standard equipment of a transmigrator couldn't be absent. 7 days. Do you know how I got through these 7 days? Every day I budget my spending, and I didn't even dare to add sausage to my hot dog. Excited as he was, his hands weren't delayed as he clutched the window and looked toward the troubled street. He saw a huge greenish-brown figure crashing into the outer wall of a convenience store, while a barbed tail fiercely smashed the storefront glass. Scorpion, Mac Gargan. The system prompt followed closely behind. Triggered iconic scene check-in task. Scorpion Street Riot. Task description. Visit the scene in person. Witness the iconic scene of the first villain's debut in Brand New Day. Basic rewards. Primary spider sense, organic web generation ability, physical enhancement +1/5. Additional challenge. Intervene in the event, prevent Scorpion from harming civilians, help Spider-Man stabilize his state, double rewards, unlock random skill fragments. Lin Yi's eyes lit up, but he quickly calmed down again. The basic rewards were easy to get, but this additional challenge had some risks. Peter's spider genes were unstable inside his body right now, and he would probably fight this battle exceptionally hard, maybe even lose control and go berserk. To go or not to go? Lin Yi rubbed his chin, looking at the pedestrians fleeing in all directions downstairs, and remembering Peter's pale face just now. Forget it, you can't become a big shot by just hiding. Besides, double rewards, take a gamble, and a bicycle turns into a motorcycle. He grabbed the jacket on the sofa and rushed out. Arriving downstairs, Lin Yi got on the electric scooter, twisted the throttle to the max, and with a hum rushed toward the direction of Scorpion. The escaping pedestrians nearby were dumbfounded. Everyone else was running outward for their lives, so why was this yellow-clad deliveryman rushing inward? Was the New York delivery circle competing so hard they didn't want their lives? Brother, are you crazy? That's a supervillain, someone shouted at the top of their lungs. Without turning his head, Lin Yi waved his hand. It's fine. I'm going to pick up an order. The pedestrian froze in place. Picking up food at a crime scene. Just how high was this performance bonus? Rushing to the edge of the scene, Lin Yi leaned his electric scooter against the corner of the wall, crouched down hiding behind a garbage can, and peeked toward Scorpion's direction. It was already a complete mess here. Many cars were overturned on the ground, and the ground was covered in either glass or car fragments. Scorpion was still swinging his tail to wreak frantic destruction, continuously roaring for Spider-Man to come out. Meanwhile, at the alley entrance on the other side of the street, a red and blue figure was leaning against the wall panting, a tear on the shoulder position of his suit, the exposed skin shimmering with faint cyan veins, and his whole body trembling slightly. Peter had already pushed himself to his limit. Scorpion came for him. He originally wanted to lead the person to a no-man's land, but the opponent started fighting directly in the commercial street. He could only bite the bullet and go. But his spider genes happened to go out of control at this time. His whole body felt like it was being pricked by needles. Lin Yi behind the garbage can, confirming that the surrounding civilians had mostly retreated, moved his wrists and felt the sense of power brought by the novice gift pack. All right, time to make an entrance. Lin Yi took a deep breath and suddenly stood up from behind the garbage can. Gathering strength in his dantian, a roar directly overpowered the noisy chaos, and he shouted at Scorpion. Come on over. Host triggered a classic meme. Trending meme amplification is in effect. Temporary buff. Defense enhancement ×3, lasting for 3 minutes. Scorpion suddenly stopped what he was doing, and his crimson compound eyes turned over. Looking at the Asian youth in a yellow delivery uniform shouting at him in front of him, the Scorpion was completely dumbfounded. He had seen plenty of superheroes, but this was his first time seeing a delivery worker coming to join the fun. What the hell are you? Scorpion asked in a hoarse voice. Lin Yi stretched his wrists and walked forward, saying in a relaxed tone. Just delivering food. Just passing by and didn't like the look of you tearing the place apart. Then he added with a straight face. I have to remind you, destroying public property on the street would cost 3 times the compensation where we're from. You've smashed half the street here, you'll probably have to work for several years just to pay it back. At the same time, Peter in the alley was also stunned. He looked at Lin Yi through his mask, his mind full of question marks. This guy looked a bit familiar. Wasn't he the delivery neighbor upstairs? How could he dare to rush out? Scorpion was directly enraged by Lin Yi's words, roaring as he whipped his tail towards Lin Yi. The fierce wind from the sweep made people's faces sting with pain. Relying on the peak physical condition from the beginner's gift pack, Lin Yi sidestepped to dodge it instantly. At the same time, his fingertips pressed the web shooter, and a white web shot out with a swoosh, firmly sticking to the opponent's stinger, while the other end was tightly wrapped around the fire hydrant on the roadside. What? Scorpion tugged hard twice, but the web didn't budge an inch, instead pulling himself into a stumble. Right in this opening, Lin Yi turned his head and shouted into the alley. Hey, the one in the red and blue spandex. Stop resting. Let's go together. Solo fighting is outdated, teaming up is the true way. Peter was taken aback for a moment. Looking at Lin Yi's back and then at the struggling Scorpion, he immediately gritted his teeth to endure the piercing pain in his body, shot a web, and swung over. The red and blue figure landed beside Scorpion with a swish. Peter clenched his fists to smash into the opponent's joints, but the moment he threw the punch, his arm trembled slightly, revealing an obvious opening. Scorpion immediately seized the opportunity to grab at Peter. Fortunately, Lin Yi was quick-witted and sharp-eyed, shooting a web diagonally that accurately wrapped around Scorpion's swinging claw, and then pulled it fiercely to the side. Focus. What are you daydreaming about while fighting a villain? I know. Peter's voice sounded muffled, and his breathing under the mask was exceptionally heavy. The backlash of the spider gene pierced like needles into the cracks of his bones, every movement brought a dull pain, and his vision began to blur. He had held on for too long and had long reached his limit. Enraged by the entanglement, Scorpion roared, snapped the web, and swept across with his tail carrying a poisonous stinger. Peter was just about to sidestep to dodge, but his legs went soft and he was half a beat slow. The poisonous stinger slashed a cut across his shoulder, and the dark cyan toxin spread towards his body along the wound. Oh no! Lin Yi's heart sank. This shouldn't let Peter's gene completely spiral out of control, otherwise, if he mutated on the spot, he wouldn't be able to be controlled. Seeing Peter's body arching up, sharp spikes uncontrollably emerging from his fingertips, and a beast-like muffled grunt coming from his throat, Lin Yi thought of a clever idea in desperation and roared in his direction. Peter, hang in there. With great power comes great responsibility. Host triggered a classic Marvel quote, trending meme amplification is in effect. Temporary buff. Mental soothing ripple, can briefly stabilize the target's mental and genetic state. The moment the invisible ripple swept across Peter, the stiffness all over his body suddenly relaxed. A trace of clarity flashed in his black pupils, the protruding spikes slowly retracted, and even the pain on his body lessened a bit. Peter's face was full of shock. With great power comes great responsibility. These words, he hadn't heard them in too long. So long that he almost forgot that someone once said these words to him. Taking advantage of Scorpion's momentary daze, Lin Yi rushed up and threw out two webs, firmly sticking to the opponent's arms and wrapping them around the utility pole behind him. Peter reacted immediately, his wrists shooting webs consecutively, binding him circle after circle from legs to waist. The two of them cooperated with unexpected tacit understanding. In just a dozen seconds, they wrapped Scorpion into an immobile white cocoon. Scorpion struggled desperately, but the web grew tighter the more he struggled, and in the end, he could only let out an unwilling roar, being tightly bound in place and unable to move. Lin Yi clapped his hands and nodded with satisfaction as he looked at his masterpiece in front of him. Perfect. This craftsmanship could even win first prize for wrapping rice dumplings during the Dragon Boat Festival back home. In the distance, police sirens sounded, and the light of the red and blue police lights was already reflected on the wall at the end of the street. The police are here, retreat quickly. Lin Yi immediately ran to pick up the electric scooter in the corner of the wall. Wait, Peter subconsciously called out to him, who on earth are you? How do you know my? How could he have webs? How did he know my name? And that phrase just now, with great power comes great responsibility. 10,000 question marks spun around in Peter's mind. Before he could even say the two words of his name, he saw Lin Yi already riding away on the electric scooter. Without looking back, Lin Yi waved his hand, and his voice drifted over with the wind. No need to thank me, neighbor. I'm just a delivery driver. Remember to give a 5-star review, dear. Peter looked at the mess all over the ground and Scorpion, who looked like a rice dumpling, then looked up at the direction where the electric scooter disappeared, falling silent for a long time. He lowered his head to look at his fingertips that were still trembling slightly, with only one thought in his mind. Are the delivery workers in Queens all this fierce now? On the other side, Lin Yi rode the electric scooter back downstairs to the apartment building, skillfully locked it, and then dashed back to his rented apartment in a flash. As soon as he collapsed onto the sofa, the system prompt tone frantically flooded his mind. Host completing basic check-in detected, rewards have been distributed. Successful intervention in the incident, preventing civilian casualties, and stabilizing Spider-Man's genetic state detected, extra challenge achieved. Rewards doubled. Obtained. Primary Spider Sense Max Level, Organic Web Generation, Permanent Physique Enhancement plus 30, Skill Fragment, Spider Climbing. First check-in achievement unlocked, system space has been opened. A warm current spread through his limbs, and Lin Yi could clearly feel that his senses instantly became several times sharper, with all kinds of sounds from the hallway falling clearly into his ears. Awesome. Lin Yi let out a long breath, pulled out a bucket of near-expiration instant noodles, and couldn't help smiling while boiling water. I finally don't have to be cannon fodder anymore. Steam rose from the hot dog stand at the corner. Mrs. Martha waved from half a street away. Lin. Same as usual. Add a sausage today. Lin Yi smiled and rode the electric scooter over, deciding to splurge a bit today. Superheroes have to enjoy themselves too, right? Mrs. Martha flipped the sausages and sighed. Have you heard? Yesterday in the commercial district, a scorpion caused a scene, and the streets are going crazy with rumors saying that Spider-Man teamed up with a food delivery guy in yellow to subdue him. Good grief. Now everyone is guessing which hidden master that delivery guy is. Lin Yi's heart skipped a beat, but on the surface, he feigned complete surprise. Really? Is that true? I took a detour to deliver an order yesterday and just happened to miss it. How could that be fake? So many people saw it. A yellow delivery uniform, riding a little e-bike. Come to think of it, it looks quite a bit like yours. Mrs. Martha teased with a smile, picking up 2 crispy grilled sausages and handing them to him. Take them, my treat. You run around the streets every day, eat up to keep your strength up. That won't do, I'll pay you. Lin Yi quickly reached for his wallet, but the old lady pressed down on his hand. What are you paying for? It's just a few dollars worth of stuff. Mrs. Martha glared at him. You always help me load and unload cargo anyway, what's wrong with eating 2 sausages? Unable to refuse further, Lin Yi had no choice but to pocket the hot dog and sausages, say his thanks, twist the handlebar, and merge into the increasing traffic. Another day of food delivery. Returning downstairs to his apartment, Lin Yi had just parked his e-bike and turned around when he saw someone leaning against the entrance. The young man was wearing a faded gray hoodie with the hood pulled down very low. Holding 2 cans of iced coffee in his hands. Hearing footsteps, he abruptly raised his head, saw Peter, and stood up straight rather awkwardly. It was Peter Parker. Lin Yi stepped forward and greeted him, waiting for me. Peter handed over one of the cans of coffee, his voice very soft. About yesterday, thank you. 4 years of solitary days had worn away even Peter's social skills. Suddenly, someone had helped him out tremendously, making even saying thank you seem raw and clumsy. Lin Yi took the coffee, the icy cold sensation passing straight to his fingertips. It's no big deal. He pulled the tab, took a gulp, and smiled with a raised eyebrow. Seeing injustice and stepping in to help, just standard procedure for us Queen's residents. Peter stared into his eyes and suddenly asked, the web you used, and also, how do you know my name? And what you said. He paused, his voice dropping very low. With great power comes great responsibility. Lin Yi inwardly exclaimed, good grief, this kid's observation skills were quite sharp. Back in school, he surely would have been the class representative. But he didn't panic at all on the outside. Leaning against the doorframe, he began talking complete nonsense. Webs, fine Chinese imports, black tech toys bought online for 9 yuan and 90 fen with free shipping. The stickiness is top-notch. I rely entirely on it to climb buildings when delivering food, saving a ton of effort. Your name. It's written right on the hallway mailbox, and my eyesight is 5.2, razor sharp. He paused, patted Peter's shoulder, and said with utmost sincerity. As for that line, I read it in some online inspirational articles, mainly just improvising on the spot to boost morale. What? Sounds pretty legitimate, right? Peter. In all his years alive, this was the first time he had ever heard of someone using a web shooter as a tool for climbing buildings, let alone getting it for 9 yuan and 90 fen with free shipping. Who was he trying to fool? But he still couldn't quite figure out the background of the person in front of him. To call him a superhero, he was reeking of the cynical, slacker vibe of a food delivery guy from head to toe. To call him an ordinary person, that method he used to tie up the scorpion yesterday was smoother than his own web slinging. As the two were standing at the entrance in a deadlock, a few muffled, bang bang, sounds suddenly came from the street, followed by a woman's scream. A system prompt instantly popped up in Lin Yi's mind. Triggered daily check-in quest. Kingpin's minions clearing the scene. Quest description. Kingpin dispatched gang members to clean up the scorpion incident scene. Basic reward. Street fighting mastery, energy resistance plus 10. Extra challenge. Assist Spider-Man in repelling the gang members and protect the civilians on site with 0 casualties. Double rewards, unlock random item lottery times 1. Like a compulsive shopper seeing a discount promotion, Lin Yi's eyes instantly lit up. Good grief. Kingpin's after-sales efficiency is pretty decent, even faster than food delivery platforms rushing an order. Peter's expression beside him had already shifted. He clenched his fists into tight balls and immediately turned to run toward the source of the sound. I've got to go check it out. Hey, don't rush. Lin Yi grabbed him by the back of his collar. Let's team up and go together. I'll play support and you handle the main output. Strong alliance, all about doubling our efficiency. Peter looked at the delivery uniform he hadn't changed out of yet and his mouth twitched. You're going in that. What's wrong? Lin Yi patted the yellow vest on his body with utter righteousness. The delivery uniform's stealth buff is maxed out. Who would ever suspect that a food delivery guy is here to deal with the mob? This is called hiding in plain sight. Tactical awareness, do you get it? The two quickly slipped over to the street where the incident happened, and from afar they saw 7 burly men in black suits holding shotguns, cornering several passers-by against a wall. The bald leader was cursing as he demanded to know Spider-Man's whereabouts. The glass of the roadside convenience store was shattered all over the floor again, and the shelves were overturned in disarray. Kingpin's men are truly ruthless. Peter lowered his voice, his fingertips already turning pale, clearly a bit agitated. Lin Yi crouched behind a trash can, pulled a hamburger out from goodness knows where, took a bite, and mumbled vaguely. Ain't that the truth? This setup is way grander than the robbery I ran into last time. Anyone who didn't know better would think they were robbing a bank. He chewed the last bite of the hamburger, flicked the wrapper ball with pinpoint accuracy into a trash can 3 meters away, and clapped his hands together. All right, appetizer's done, time to get down to real business. You circle around from the left, I'll draw the frontal firepower, and we'll hit them with a pincer attack. Before Peter could react, he saw Lin Yi adjust his delivery helmet, swagger out from behind cover, and shout at the top of his lungs. Hey, listen up, people inside. Your delivery has arrived. Come out and pick it up. The entire scene instantly fell silent. Several burly men in black suits turned their heads in unison, staring at Lin Yi in his yellow vest with expressions as if they had seen a ghost. The bald leader was completely dumbfounded. What delivery? The mob's exclusive overtime combo meal. Lin Yi walked forward with a straight face. It's pretty tough coming out to fight and kill late at night, shouldn't you have something nice to eat? Let me tell you, this burger has double cheese, smells amazing. Host detected triggering a meme-worthy legendary scene, internet meme buff randomly activated. Temporary buff. Trash talk taunt maxed out, enemy hostility 100% locked onto self, movement speed plus 50%. Lin Yi was inwardly blooming with joy, an unexpected bonus. This wave wasn't a loss at all. The bald man snapped to his senses, his face instantly turning dark as he raised his gun and aimed straight at him. You have a death wish. Hey, that's where you're wrong. Lin Yi sidestepped smoothly, easily dodging the bullet as a web shot from his fingertips, accurately sticking to the opponent's barrel and jerking it upward. Why are you losing your temper? You can't just start shooting over a bad review that lacks professional ethics entirely. Bang, bang, bang. The rest of them opened fire one after another. Relying on his max-level spider sense, Lin Yi darted back and forth through the gaps between the bullets, his footwork as flamboyant as someone doing square dancing. While dodging, he shouted, "Is that it? Is that it? Was your marksmanship taught by a PE teacher? You can't even hit a food delivery guy like me. Go back and practice for another 2.5 years." Peter watched in dumbfounded silence. He had originally been worried that Lin Yi would get into trouble, but looking at this posture, the other person was even more at ease than he was. He no longer hesitated. His wrist shot out spider webs to swing over, kicking two burly men flying, and after landing, his fists accurately smashed into the opponent's stomach. With Lin Yi drawing the firepower, his attacks were exceptionally smooth, though occasionally his fingertips would uncontrollably sprout spikes, which he had to forcefully suppress. Lin Yi seized the opportunity and shouted at the crowd, "Who else?" Detected that the host triggered a classic internet meme. Meme amplification takes effect. Temporary buff. Strength amplification times 2, lasting 2 minutes. The moment the strength surged up, Lin Yi directly picked up a shared bicycle nearby and smashed it over as if it were a toy, instantly knocking two burly men to the ground. This buff is really powerful. Lin Yi shook his hands, looking at his hands in wonder. If I had known shouting slogans was so useful, I would have just shouted slogans straight away earlier. In less than 5 minutes, all 7 burly men were tied up like zongzi, neatly lined up against the base of the wall like sausages for sale. Lin Yi patted the dust off his hands, looking at his masterpiece and nodding with satisfaction. Perfect. With this tying skill, I could have gone to be a kidnapper back in the day. This truly matches my professional background. Peter beside him panted, his gaze towards him having changed from confusion to shock. He now seriously doubted whether all delivery workers in Queens had some kind of hidden identity. Detected that the host completed the basic check-in, rewards have been distributed. Detected 0 civilian casualties, additional challenge achieved. Rewards doubled. Obtained street fighting mastery, max level, energy resistance plus 20, random item draw once. Congratulations to the host for unlocking the title. Delivery hero after equipping, street stealth effect plus 30%, passersby automatically ignore. Lin Yi almost laughed out loud. Delivery hero. Why did this title sound so shabby? But it seemed pretty useful. The sound of police sirens came from afar, and the two tacitly turned around and slipped away. Returning downstairs to the apartment building, the streetlights drew their shadows long. Peter stopped in his tracks, looked at Lin Yi, and asked seriously, "Who on earth are you?" Lin Yi turned back and raised an eyebrow at him, his mouth carrying a somewhat punchable smile. "I already said, I'm just a delivery person." He paused and patted Peter's arm. "But if anything happens in Queens again in the future, you can find me. After all, with great power comes great fast delivery, right?" After saying that, he waved his hand, swaggered into the hallway, leaving Peter standing alone in place, with the phrase, "With great power comes great fast delivery," repeatedly cycling in his mind. Peter was silent for a long time, lowered his head to look at his hands, and then looked up at the light at the hallway entrance. In these 4 years forgotten by the world, for the first time, he felt that he didn't seem so lonely anymore. And Lin Yi upstairs was staring at the system panel, rubbing his hands excitedly, preparing to start the random item draw. System, open it for me quickly. I want battle armor. I want vibranium. I want superpower of money. The roulette wheel spun rapidly, and finally stopped with a ding sound. Congratulations to the host for obtaining customized delivery uniform battle suit, knife-proof and bulletproof, comes with spider web launcher, never gets dirty. Lin Yi. Fine then, they really welded the delivery persona dead set, huh? The corner of his mouth twitched, and he took out the battle suit to try it on. Yellow and black color scheme, the fabric was form-fitting and comfortable, and the chest was printed with a mini spider logo, not to mention, it looked pretty handsome. Make do with it, it's a battle suit after all. Lin Yi looked at himself in the mirror, better than fighting in ordinary delivery clothes. Putting the battle suit into the system space, Lin Yi lay down on the creaking box spring bed. Awesome. Lying on the bed after being tired all day is just comfortable. He looked at the peeling ceiling and recalled what had happened in the past 2 days. Traveling through for 7 days, from running deliveries to death and gnawing on near-expiration instant noodles, to binding the system and teaming up with Peter Parker, this progress could be considered a king of involution level among transmigrators. It's just that the New York underworld schedule is too hardworking. 996 isn't enough to satisfy them, right? Lin Yi yawned, coming out to make trouble in the middle of the night, without even overtime pay, purely beasts of burden under black-hearted capitalists. Unconsciously, Lin Yi fell fast asleep. The next day, delivery orders rang continuously in the phone like urging for one's life. Although he had the system, he still had to deliver food to make a living. Lin Yi had no time to feel sentimental, and immediately rode his e-bike racing wildly through the traffic. And his mind was entirely filled with the 4 large characters, timeout deduction penalty. No one could ever have imagined that yesterday he was still punishing evil and promoting good alongside Spider-Man. When the noon sun was at its most venomous, he turned into Old Joe's community convenience store to replenish iced water. As soon as he pushed open the door, he saw a familiar figure squatting at the very bottom of the instant food shelf, holding a near-expiration discounted whole wheat bread, frowning at the $3.5 price tag, expression as solemn as when facing Thanos. Who else could it be if not Peter Parker? Yo, doing a ration selection here. Lin Yi walked over carrying 2 bottles of iced cola, handed one to Peter. Look at your furrowed brow. Anyone who didn't know would think you were choosing a vibranium formula. Peter was startled. The bread in his hand dropped to the ground. Looking up and seeing it was Lin Yi, the tips of his ears turned half red, and he took the cola and said in a low voice, "Thanks. I'll give you the money in a moment." What a big deal. AAing for a bottle of cola makes us working people in Queens look so lacking in prestige. Lin Yi leaned against the shelf, glancing at the dry bread in his hand. Eating just this. This thing isn't even enough to fill the gaps between your teeth. Won't you starve and faint halfway when you go out swinging spider webs tonight? Peter pursed his lips and didn't reply. Most of the money from odd jobs recently went into filling the holes for battle suit repairs and rent. He saved wherever he could on meals, and if he hadn't exhausted his strength moving goods in the morning, he wouldn't even have been willing to take this discounted bread. Lin Yi guessed roughly what was going on seeing his look, and inwardly complained that this kid had truly welded the 3 words, tragic badass, into his DNA. Without exposing him verbally, he turned around and took 2 beef rolls from the heating cabinet, slamming them onto the counter with a paw. Uncle Joe, calculate it together. Old Joe puffed on a cigarette and glanced at the 2 of them, lowering his voice while calculating the money. Lin, let me tell you something, the streets haven't been peaceful lately. That gang of thugs you tied up last night are people under Tombstone, who is under Kingpin. Right now that gang is casting a net everywhere, inquiring about news of you and Spider-Man, saying they want to dig you out and cripple you. Tombstone. Lin Yi raised an eyebrow. Kingpin's #1 enforcer, he's a pretty ruthless character. His fists can smash through concrete walls, and the human lives under his hands number at least 80 to 100. Old Joe flicked the cigarette ash and continued. Lately Queen's territory is entirely managed by him. You should keep a low profile recently. Don't try to be brave and competitive. If you really run into him it will be trouble. As soon as the words fell, the system prompt tone in Lin Yi's head punched in for work on time. Detected iconic villain forces infiltrating the neighborhood. System early warning triggered. Risk level. Medium risk. Prompt. The enemy is investigating the identities of the host and Spider-Man. Lin Yi felt a jolt in his heart, but on the surface, he still maintained a flippant demeanor. No way, Old Joe, I'm just a delivery guy. What would he want with me? It can't be that because I delivered his food late last time, he specifically came to give me a bad review, right? Old Joe was amused by him and chuckled, shaking his head as he handed over the change. You brat, keep running that mouth. When you actually get beaten up, don't go crying for your parents. Lin Yi and Peter walked out of the convenience store. Peter paused, turned his head to look at him, and lowered his voice. Tombstone is not someone to mess with. If you don't want to get involved, it's still not too late to pull out now. He was used to being a loner and had long since been accustomed to carrying all the trouble by himself. Lin Yi had helped him twice in the past 2 days, and this favor was already heavy enough. He really didn't want to drag this glib and enthusiastic neighbor into this muddy water. Lin Yi glanced at him and scoffed. What? Just finished 2 rounds of cooperation and you want to kick your teammate and solo? What were you doing earlier? Besides, I make a living in Queens. If the neighbors are bullied and I pretend not to see it, how can I establish myself in the delivery circle in the future? Before his voice faded, an old woman's exclamation suddenly came from the street corner, followed by a loud crash of metal overturning. The aroma of grilled sausages mixed with dust drifted over. The two exchanged a glance without saying another word, and almost simultaneously bolted over. Mrs. Martha's hot dog stand was flipped upside down, with grilled sausages and bread rolling all over the ground. The old woman was shoved staggeringly by 2 burly men in black suits, almost hitting the curb. The scar-faced leader stepped on the grill and spat. Old thing, you dare to delay paying protection money to Tombstone. I think you don't want to run this stall anymore. Peter's expression sank instantly, his fists clenching so hard they creaked, and pale cyan spikes uncontrollably poked out from his fingertips. He quickly put his hands behind his back and pressed down hard. But it didn't escape the sharp-eyed Lin Yi. He reached out to press Peter's shoulder, gave Peter a steady look, adjusted his delivery helmet, swaggered over, and shouted at the top of his lungs. Hey, hey, hey. What are you doing? Bullying an old woman in broad daylight. Are you guys filming? New York gang suppression, here. The scar-faced man turned around, saw a delivery man in a yellow vest, and laughed on the spot, waving his hand like swatting flies. Where did this stinky delivery guy come from? Get lost. Mind your own business. Careful, I beat you up too. Mind my business. This old woman is my steady meal ticket. I eat my 3 meals of hot dogs here every day. You overturned her stall and delayed my chow time, you know. Lin Yi cracked his wrists, his joints popping, and his tone was extremely punchable. I advise you to quickly prop the stall back up and apologize to the old woman, otherwise you can fly to heaven. The scar-faced man smiled grimly and took 2 steps forward, similarly cracking his fists. I think you're tired of living. Lin Yi grinned, channeled his energy to his dantian, and maxed out his volume. Young people don't play by martial arts ethics. Host detected triggering a classic internet meme. Meme amplification takes effect. Temporary buff. Melee attacks carry a stiffness effect, lasting for 1.5 minutes. The moment the buff took effect, Lin Yi kicked off the ground and shot out instantly, his fist accurately smashing into the scar-faced man's stomach. The opponent was originally going to throw a punch to block, but the moment Lin Yi approached, his whole body suddenly stiffened, as if a pause button had been pressed. He was nailed to the spot, unable to move, and took this solid punch hard, curling up like a shrimp on the spot and squatting on the ground holding his stomach, gasping for breath. Seeing this, the 2 subordinate thugs picked up steel pipes and rushed over. Peter timely swept out from the side, his wrist shooting out spider silk to entangle the 2 steel pipes and fling them aside, then raising his kick to strike both of their chests with extremely slick movements. Only when landing, his fingertips trembled slightly, and he quickly clenched his fists, forcing the protruding spikes back down. Lin Yi had already finished dealing with the leader and turned his head to catch Peter's little action, frowning inwardly. The frequency of his spider genes going out of control was getting higher and higher. If he didn't find a way soon, something big was bound to happen sooner or later. In less than 3 minutes, all 3 burly men were hung from the street lamp pole by spider silk, neatly arranged. Mrs. Martha was still shaken, pulling Lin Yi's hand and thanking him profusely, turning around to pack him a full bag of hot dogs. After much persuasion, Lin Yi managed to stop her, and turning around, he saw Peter squatting on the ground, quietly picking up the grilled sausages that didn't look too dirty, wiping them clean, and putting them back on the tray. He walked over and kicked the tip of Peter's shoe. Stop picking them up, they're covered in dust. I'll treat you tomorrow noon. Double sausages with double sauce, definitely enough to fill you up. Peter raised his head, and after 2 seconds, said softly. Thank you. Right. Lin Yi leaned against the street lamp pole and casually mentioned, from now on, 8 p.m. every night, rooftop meeting. Let's keep each other informed, so that if someone corners us one day, we won't be without backup. Peter abruptly looked at Lin Yi, a flash of astonishment in his eyes, along with a hint of indescribable warmth. He had carried it alone for 4 years, and no one had ever said words like, looking out for each other, to him. After a long while, he let out a soft, "Mn," his voice very quiet but very earnest. Daily check-in quest. Protect Mrs. Martha's hot dog stand, completed. Basic reward issued. Agility +5, spider silk adhesion strength increased by 10%. Extra challenge achieved. 0 casualties, quick resolution within 1 minute, rewards doubled, obtained medical repair gel ×3. Lin Yi felt pleased inside, and turning around saw Peter still squatting on the ground helping to tidy up the stall. He leaned against the street lamp pole and took a bite of a hot dog, thinking to himself. Actually, this Marvel universe didn't seem so hard to endure after all. Exactly 8 p.m. Lin Yi climbed up to the rooftop holding a plastic bag. This crappy apartment had nothing but cheap rent as its advantage, with every flaw imaginable including no elevator, so going up to the rooftop to slack off required bringing your own physical training buff. The rooftop was as dilapidated as a post-war ruin, with residents' clothes and socks drying on one side, and discarded mattresses and old furniture piled on the other. Peter had arrived long ago, squatting on the concrete ledge at the edge of the rooftop with his hoodie pulled over his head, huddled into a small ball with his back turned. From afar, he looked like a stray cat emoing on the eaves. "Yo, playing Overwatch here," Lin Yi shouted out loudly. Peter gave a full-body shudder in fright, almost tumbling off the ledge, and hurriedly steadied his stance to turn around. Seeing it was him, his tone carried a bit of lingering panic. "Why do you walk without making a sound?" Practiced from delivering food, specialized in being completely silent. Lin Yi walked over, tossed the plastic bag onto the tattered mattress, and pulled out 2 boxes of near-expiration discounted pizza and iced cola. The pizza shop downstairs is half price after 8 p.m., buy one get one free. Make do with this, it's better than gnawing on dry bread. Peter moved over and sat down, picking up a piece of pizza and eating it quickly, not even noticing the cheese stuck to the corner of his mouth. Lin Yi handed over a tissue, but his mouth didn't spare him. "Eat slower, nobody's fighting you for it. Your eating manners are fiercer than the raccoon I bumped into in the alley last time. Anyone who didn't know better would think I'm abusing my teammate." Peter's ear tips instantly turned red, his chewing pace slowed down, and he whispered a quiet "thank you." The two of them chatted idly while eating. Peter said that today while moving goods at the warehouse, Foreman Mike saw that he worked steadily and gave him an extra $20 in cash. Lin Yi, on the other hand, began to rant about the weird customer he met in the afternoon. The customer asked him to carry 2 cases of mineral water up to the 8th floor and didn't even tip. He just left the delivery at the door and slipped away, perfectly embodying the working stiff's principle of never putting up with the client's bad habits. Lin Yi's sharp tongue made Peter laugh endlessly. After chatting for a while, Peter put away his smile and said in a low voice, "Tombstone's men have been searching very strictly these past 2 days, and all of Queens has their eyes and ears. Scorpion was deliberately released by him just to force me to show my face. Now that the 2 of us messed up his plans, he definitely won't let this rest. I also heard some news." Lin Yi bit down on his cola straw and said in a casual tone. That abandoned textile factory in the west of the city was bought by him to use as a stronghold. He's stockpiled quite a bit of ammunition inside, and I heard he's going to make a big move in the next couple of days to completely swallow up the territory in Queens. As soon as the words fell, Peter's hand holding the cola suddenly gave a violent shake. The aluminum can clattered onto the cement floor, and brown bubbles spilled out. Peter instantly clenched his fists, his fingers turning white from tension, and a few pale cyan spikes uncontrollably protruded from his fingertips. A layer of cold sweat seeped from his forehead, and even his breathing grew a bit heavier. Acting up again, Lin Yi immediately straightened his body, not daring to touch him rashly, and only said slowly, "Don't panic, follow my breathing. Inhale for 4 seconds, hold for 4 seconds, exhale for 6 seconds. Just treat it like a game skill cooldown, slowly stall it back, don't confront it head on." Peter gritted his teeth, staring fixedly at Lin Yi's movements, and adjusted his breathing rhythmically, beat by beat. The rise and fall of his chest gradually stabilized, and the spikes on his fingertips slowly retracted. He leaned against the wall in exhaustion, his face pale and his voice hoarse. It's getting more and more frequent. Lin Yi patted Peter's shoulder. Practice this method every day from now on. Suppressing it even a little bit helps. Once we get through this busy spell, I'll take you to find Dr. Banner. He's an expert in the field of genetic mutation, and he'll completely solve this issue. Peter nodded. Then, Lin Yi pulled out a black senior-friendly phone with chipped paint from his pocket, the buttons polished slick and bright from use, and handed it to Peter. For you, to stay in touch. The battery is fully charged, and the first one is my number. Call or text me directly if anything comes up. Peter was stunned looking at that old phone. For 4 years, the world had forgotten who Peter Parker was, and his phone only had the numbers of his foreman and part-time boss. Never had anyone intentionally left him a private contact number, let alone anyone saying, "Come to me if anything happens." After a long while, he gently reached out and took it. His fingertips accidentally brushed against the back of Lin Yi's hand, and as if scalded, he quickly pulled them back. I don't have money to give you right now. Talking about money is so cliché. Lin Yi waved his hand, smiling in a thoroughly punchable way. Just treat this as the partner initiation fee. From now on, we are the gold duo of queens. You mainly output and tank damage, while I handle the tricks and play support. The combination of our strong forces is at the level of tearing up the bot lane in a game. Peter looked at him, the corners of his mouth curving slightly again. He lowered his head and clumsily pressed the buttons of the old phone twice, his movements very light and careful, for fear of crushing the buttons. Just at this moment, the system prompt sound in Lin Yi's mind suddenly rang out, carrying an unprecedented sense of urgency. High-risk iconic scene countdown detected. Event name: Abandoned Factory Ambush. Risk level: High risk. Countdown: 72 hours. Hint: the enemy has locked onto the host's general activity range, and the ambush circle is closing in. The smile on Lin Yi's face vanished instantly, and he looked up toward the west of the city. What's wrong? Peter immediately sensed his change, his muscles instantly tensing up all over. Lin Yi turned his head and said with a serious expression, "Tombstone might be about to make a move." Over the next 2 days, Queens appeared calm and tranquil on the surface. On the streets, vendors set up stalls as usual, and traffic jams occurred as usual, no different from any other day. But secretly, Tombstone's eyes and ears filled every alleyway, and the swaying figures of tough men in black suits were more numerous than delivery drivers. Lin Yi rode his little yellow e-bike through the streets and alleys as usual. By day, he was a dedicated delivery rider, and overtime pay deductions made his heart race faster than any supervillain. At night, he scouted around the abandoned textile factory in the west of the city. Old Joe's convenience store became a temporary intelligence station. The old man puffed on a cigarette and spilled all the underworld gossip he had heard in one go. Tombstone's gang shipped 3 boxes of things into the factory last night, sealed up tight. The people keeping watch said they were all heavy hardware. And another thing, they've put out word again that anyone who can smoke out Spider-Man and that guy in the yellow clothes gets a bounty of $50,000. Right now, quite a few thugs on the street have gone crazy, wandering everywhere looking for people. $50,000. Lin Yi chewed on his hot dog and raised an eyebrow with a smile. My market value is pretty high. Back in the day, I would have had to deliver food for 3 years to earn that amount. You punks still have the heart to joke around. Old Joe glared at him and shoved 2 packs of Band-Aids and iodophor into his hands. Take them, you might need them if things really kick off. Watch your safety, Mrs. Martha is still waiting to bake sausages for you every day. On the other side, Peter hauled goods in the warehouse during the day, and at night, taking advantage of his web-swinging patrols, he marked out all the surveillance guard posts on the outer perimeter of the factory. His drawing skills were unexpectedly good. On the wrinkled piece of assignment paper, the architectural structure and patrol routes were marked out clearly. When they met up on the rooftop, the two of them compared intelligence and both had a clear idea in their minds. There are 4 posts at the front gate, 2 at the side gate, and a lookout on the roof. Peter pointed at the blueprint, his finger tapping the west wall. There's an abandoned unloading port here. The railing has rusted through, so we can crawl in. Inside is the warehouse area, with the fewest guards. Lin Yi squatted nearby eating pizza, saying vaguely, brute forcing it definitely won't work. Tombstone, that guy has thick skin and tough flesh, like a humanoid tank. We'd be at a disadvantage going head to head with him. My idea is to lure him out to fight, use the factory's pipes and steel frames to run circles around him, and kite him to death. Peter nodded and added, he has about 20-something subordinates, and they all carry guns. We have to clear out these lackeys first before focusing on dealing with Tombstone. Done. Lin Yi snapped his fingers. That settles the tactics. High-risk iconic scene triggered. Abandoned factory ambush. Quest description. Intervene in Tombstone's ambush event. Defeat Kingpin's top henchman. Basic reward. Spider climbing, max level, web binding mastery, strength enhancement plus 2-0. Extra challenge. 0 casualties, capture Tombstone alive, destroy enemy arsenal. Rewards doubled, unlock rare skill, ballistic prediction. Lin Yi was catching up on sleep in his rented apartment. Hearing the prompt sound, he sat straight up, grabbed his delivery battlesuit, and pulled it onto his body. A few seconds later, the senior friendly phone buzzed twice. It was a text message from Peter, with only 2 words, coming. 2 minutes later, the two rendezvoused at the stairwell entrance. Peter had already changed into the Spider-Man suit. The red and blue color scheme wasn't very conspicuous in the night, and the hole on his shoulder hadn't been mended yet, exuding a down-and-out badass vibe. Lin Yi was dressed in a yellow and black delivery suit, the little spider logo on his chest glowing faintly, making him look at first glance like a midnight working delivery rider. Let's go, Lin Yi said concisely, vaulting onto the electric scooter. As for Peter, he leapt forward, his web sticking to the rooftops as he swung, silently following above Lin Yi. There was hardly anyone on the midnight streets, and the abandoned textile factory stood far away in the darkness. According to their plan, the two sneaked in from the loading dock on the west side. The rust-eaten iron railings snapped with a single bend, and the interior was filled with thick cobwebs and dust. Peter lowered his voice and introduced the layout inside the factory to Lin Yi. 50 meters ahead is the main workshop. Tombstone should be inside. Lin Yi made an, okay, hand gesture, and a web shot silently from his fingertips, sticking to a distant iron frame before giving it a gentle tug. A muffled clank echoed, exceptionally piercing in the silent factory. 2 guards immediately walked over, grumbling and cursing, to check it out. An opportunity. Peter's figure flickered. A web shot out to entangle one man's ankle, and with a fierce yank, the opponent let out a muffled grunt and fell face first into the dirt. At the same time, Lin Yi darted out from the side, his hand chop landing precisely on the back of the other man's neck, knocking him unconscious. The two coordinated as smoothly as flowing water, just like old teammates who had partnered for years. In less than 10 minutes, the outer guards were all silently taken down, tightly bound, and tossed into the corner of the warehouse. The two sneaked all the way to the entrance of the main workshop, where a rough voice came from inside. Are the people all arranged? Tomorrow, lure those 2 guys over. I'm going to crush their bones with my own hands. Another person's voice replied. Everything is ready, Brother Tombstone. Lin Yi and Peter exchanged glances and were just about to rush in when a sneer suddenly came from the workshop. You two, after listening for so long, aren't you going to come in and sit a while? Oh no, they've been discovered. Almost simultaneously, the workshop doors violently exploded open, and steel rebars mixed with wood chips smashed towards them. Peter immediately shot a web to pull Lin Yi backward, barely dodging the incoming rebars. Amidst the dust and smoke, a burly man over 2 meters tall walked out slowly, his muscles bulging high, with a diagonal scar across his face that looked exceptionally ferocious. It was none other than Tombstone. Just you 2 brats ruined quite a few of my businesses. Tombstone cracked his neck, his eyes sweeping over Lin Yi's delivery suit with a scoff. I thought it was some big shot, but it turns out to be a food delivery guy. What's wrong with delivering food? Lin Yi was a bit disheveled but refused to lose the verbal sparring. Food delivery guys at least make an honest living with their own hands, unlike you, who are so proud of being a lackey for others. Tombstone's face darkened, and he violently stomped his feet against the ground, charging forward like a cannonball, his sandbag-sized fist carrying a fierce wind as it smashed toward Lin Yi's face. This punch was immensely powerful. If it landed solidly, his head would probably blossom. Careful. Peter shot a web from his hand, entangling Lin Yi's waist and pulling him to the side. The fist brushed past Lin Yi's shoulder and smashed into the wall, the concrete wall instantly cracking with spiderweb-like patterns as gravel splattered everywhere. Lin Yi was secretly shocked in his heart. This guy's strength was even fiercer than expected, truly a walking human siege hammer. Taking the opportunity, Peter launched a surprise attack from the side, his fist slamming into Tombstone's back, but it felt like hitting a steel plate, the counter shock hurting his own hand. Without even turning his head, Tombstone swept his elbow backward. Peter hurriedly performed a backflip to dodge, and the ground beneath his feet was smashed into a shallow pit. Is this all your strength? It's like an itch scratch. Tombstone sneered viciously, turning to rush toward Peter. Seeing this, Lin Yi took a deep breath, gathered his internal energy into his dantian, and shouted out a classic line at the top of his lungs. I want to fight 10. Host detected triggering a classic meme, trending meme enhancement activated. Temporary buff. All attributes enhanced by 1.5x, attack speed increased by 80%, lasting for 2 minutes. A warm current instantly surged through his whole body. Lin Yi exerted sudden force with his feet, his figure moving so fast it left afterimages, instantly rushing to Tombstone's side, his fists carrying a piercing wind as they smashed into his joints. Tombstone let out a muffled grunt of pain, his movements visibly lagging by half a beat. Peter, entangle his legs, Lin Yi shouted. Peter immediately understood, his wrists continuously firing webs. The white webs wrapped around Tombstone's legs, and then he pulled hard toward both sides. Tombstone lost his balance and crashed to his knees on the ground, shaking the floor with a thud. Taking advantage of the momentum, the two launched a fierce attack. Web restraints combined with close quarters combat actually suppressed Tombstone so much that he couldn't lift his head for a moment. But this guy's skin was simply too thick. Ordinary attacks landing on him were like scratching an itch, only providing temporary containment without causing any substantive damage at all. After fighting for a few minutes, Tombstone gradually figured out their patterns, suddenly letting out a furious roar as his muscles tensed up, actually forcefully snapping the webs. He counter-grabbed the web Peter shot over and pulled hard. Peter was caught off guard and dragged over, and Tombstone's sandbag-sized fist smashed down right at his face. Peter, Lin Yi's heart tightened violently. At the critical moment, Peter barely dodged to the side, but his shoulder was still grazed by the punch wind. He flew out like a kite with a broken string, crashing into the iron frame and producing a loud clanging crash. He propped himself up on the ground wanting to stand, but suddenly let out a muffled grunt, clutching his arm as blue-black spikes uncontrollably protruded from his fingertips, his body starting to tremble slightly. His genes were acting up again. Seeing this, Tombstone sneered viciously and walked over step by step. Spider-Man. I see you're nothing much after all. Lin Yi's pupils constricted, and he immediately rushed forward to stand in front of Peter, frantically plotting countermeasures in his mind. Head-on clashes definitely wouldn't work, he needed to find an opening. He swept his gaze over the towering steel frames nearby and the hanging heavy textile machines, instantly forming an idea in his mind. Hey, big guy. Lin Yi hooked his finger at Tombstone, his tone extremely punchable. With a speed like yours, you can't even touch the corner of my clothes, and you still dare to run in the underworld. If I were you, I'd have gone home to grow sweet potatoes long ago. Tombstone was completely enraged, roaring as he charged over. I'm going to tear your mouth apart. I've been waiting for you. Lin Yi turned and ran, intentionally leading Tombstone under the steel frame. Seeing the opponent catch up, he slid and dodged with a sudden kick, while shooting 2 streams of web from his fingertips, precisely sticking to the buckle on the steel frame. Come down. He yanked hard on the web, and the buckle snapped in response. The heavy textile machine hanging midair crashed down violently, landing squarely on Tombstone's back. With a thunderous loud bang, smoke and dust filled the air. Crushed by a machine weighing several tons, no matter how much of an iron body Tombstone had, he couldn't withstand it. Letting out a muffled grunt, he was directly smashed flat onto the ground, struggling twice but failing to get back up. Lin Yi walked over panting, binding him tightly layer after layer with webs to ensure the opponent couldn't move an inch, before turning and running quickly to Peter's side. Peter was curled up on the ground, trembling all over, the spikes having already spread to his wrists. He gritted his teeth, trying to force the spikes back down, but the harder he tried, the worse the backlash became. Don't force it. Follow my breathing. Lin Yi squatted down, pressed his shoulders, and spoke in a steady tone. Inhale, exhale, yes, take it slow. It'll be fine once it eases up. Peter stared into his eyes and adjusted his breathing to his rhythm. After a long while, the strange sensation on his body slowly faded, but his complexion was frighteningly pale, and his forehead was covered in cold sweat. It's fine. Lin Yi breathed a sigh of relief. This time is worse than the last. Peter nodded, his voice hoarse. We can't drag this out anymore. Lin Yi knew very well that if this dragged on, Peter's genes would completely lose control sooner or later. They had to find Bruce Banner as soon as possible. At this moment, the system prompt sounds rang out one after another. Basic check-in mission completed. Rewards have been distributed. Detected enemy 0 casualties. Captured Tombstone alive. Destroyed the arsenal along with smashing it. All extra challenges completed. Rewards doubled. Acquired. Spider climbing, max level, web binding mastery, strength enhancement plus 40, rare skill, ballistic prediction. Achievement unlocked. First time teaming up to defeat a high-tier villain, system space expanded to 20 cubic meters. Just as Lin Yi finished reading the rewards, police sirens came from a distance. He helped Peter up and walked toward the side door. Let's retreat, the police are here. I'll figure something out about Banner. Peter leaned against him, his steps still a bit weak. In the night, the two walked closely together and slowly disappeared into the mouth of the alley. In the apartment hallway, the lights flickered on and off. Peter leaned against the cold wall, recovering from the lingering effects of the genetic out-of-control state. A large section of his suit was worn through again, and the exposed skin was still stained with tiny bits of cement. Lin Yi took repair gel out of the system space and threw it to him. Leaning against the opposite wall to catch his breath, he looked at his tattered red and blue suit and shook his head. I'm telling you, your suit's repair rate is way too high. It's like my delivery box, patching up holes every other day. At this rate, all your odd job money won't even be enough to cover it. Peter unscrewed the gel cap and smeared it on his wounds, hissing in pain, his voice muffled. It's already almost not enough. Over the past 4 years, his suit relied entirely on his own sewing and patching. When the web shooters broke, he scavenged old parts to piece them together, living life like someone in extreme poverty. In the past, May used to help him mend clothes, but now there wasn't even someone to lend a hand. Hearing this, Lin Yi sighed inwardly and didn't poke further into the matter, cutting straight to the point. The matter of your genes going out of control can't be delayed any longer. If this drags on and you transform into a giant spider to go on a rampage in the streets one day, the Department of Damage Control will arrest you right on the street and slice you up for research. I know. Peter lowered his head, his fingertips gripping the gel tube tightly, but I can't find anyone who can help. He couldn't contact Doctor Strange at all, and the Avengers were even more out of reach. The world had forgotten who Peter Parker was, and he didn't even have a way to seek help. Don't worry, I've already found the way out for you. Actually, Lin Yi had known Banner's location long ago, but he still lied. News passed from Old Joe is that Bruce Banner is currently a guest lecturer at Empire State University. We'll go find him tomorrow and ask him while he's getting out of class. Peter nodded. Dr. Banner should be able to solve the problem of his genes going out of control. The next morning, the two squeezed onto the subway heading to the college town. Peter was wrapped up tightly, his hoodie pulled down to his browbone, a mask covering half his face, and a pair of chipped sunglasses on. His whole body exuded a suspicious aura of, I am not a good guy. Can you tone it down a bit? Lin Yi sat next to him and complained in a low voice. Your outfit is more flashy than a fugitive on the subway. The transit police have glanced at you 3 times. Anyone who doesn't know better would think you're going to rob a bank. Peter quickly slid his sunglasses down, revealing half an eye, and said, I'm afraid of being recognized. Recognized for what? Recognized as Spider-Man. Lin Yi rolled his eyes. Right now the world has forgotten what Peter Parker looks like. Even if you took off your mask, stood on the street and yelled, I am Spider-Man, people would just think your Chunibyo was acting up. Peter thought about it, and it seemed to be true. He silently took off both his sunglasses and mask. Behind a tree at the entrance of the biology department teaching building at Empire State University. Lin Yi and Peter disguised themselves as auditing students, each holding a cup of iced coffee. Later, when class ends, he'll come out through the main entrance. You go up and strike up a conversation, and I'll assist you. Lin Yi lowered his voice. Don't be nervous, just treat it like asking a teacher a question. Be sincere, we're the ones asking for their help. Peter's throat moved, and he said in a low voice, I know. As soon as he finished speaking, the bell rang for the end of class, and students swarmed out of the teaching building in droves. Within 2 minutes, a man wearing a light gray shirt and black-rimmed glasses walked out holding a teaching plan. His hair was somewhat messy, his cuffs were rolled up a bit, and a silvery gray metal device was exposed on his left arm, clinging to his skin and looking like a sophisticated smart wristband. It was precisely Bruce Banner. He walked slowly. Occasionally, students came up to ask him questions, and he patiently stopped to answer them. His tone was gentle, and he looked entirely like a standard university professor, with not a trace showing that Hulk was hidden inside him. Let's go. Lin Yi patted Peter, and the two walked up to meet him. Dr. Banner. Hello. Peter spoke first, his voice a bit tight. Sorry to bother you, I have a matter regarding genes that I'd like to consult you about. It's very important. Banner stopped, pushed up his glasses, swept his gaze over the two of them, and asked calmly. You guys don't seem to be my students, right? What is it about? Lin Yi took over the conversation, handed the coffee in his hand over, and spoke in a sincere tone. Something went wrong with his genes. We've asked many people with no luck, and we were truly driven to desperation before coming to trouble you. Banner didn't take the coffee. He fell silent for a few seconds, glanced at the surrounding passing students, and said in a low voice. It's not convenient to talk here. Follow me. The two followed him around to the back of the teaching building and entered a standalone private laboratory. The door lock was double encrypted, and inside, the instruments were fully equipped and tidily kept. Have a seat. Banner placed his teaching plan on the table and continued. Let's get this straight first. I only do routine academic research now and don't touch any dangerous experiments. If you're looking for Hulk, you've found the wrong person. In the past 2 years, quite a few people had come looking for him out of admiration, some wanting to shoot videos, some wanting superpowers, and others wanting to capture him for experiments. He was long used to it. We're not looking for Hulk, we're looking for you. Peter hurriedly pulled down his collar, revealing the light cyan patterns on his shoulder and neck, and explained. Dr. Banner, I am Spider-Man. My spider genes are going out of control, and it's happening more and more frequently. If this keeps up, I'm afraid I won't be able to control myself. Peter felt that Dr. Banner didn't need to hold anything back as a member of the Avengers, so he directly revealed his identity as Spider-Man. Banner's hands paused in their movement, and his eyes turned extremely shocked. He stared fixedly at Peter's face, his brows knitted tightly together. He remembered Spider-Man, but he didn't remember Peter Parker. He actually had no impression whatsoever of the young face before him, and couldn't even remember the name. You're Spider-Man? Banner asked in a puzzled voice. Impossible. I remember Spider-Man, but I don't know you at all. Lin Yi explained from the side. Dr. Banner, Peter Parker is Spider-Man, and Spider-Man is Peter Parker. As for why you forgot, we can talk about it later. Take a look at the genetic problem that has appeared on Peter first. Banner's eyes were still full of doubt, but he still brought over the experimental equipment, collected some blood samples from Peter, and began to inspect and analyze them. Before long, Banner's brows furrowed even tighter. It is indeed characteristic of spider genes, but the state isn't right. It's neither rejection nor regression. He paused and looked at Peter. You came to me because you want me to excise the out-of-control parts. Yeah, Peter nodded hurriedly, a bit of anticipation in his eyes. I was wondering if we can keep the good parts of the genes and remove the bad and out-of-control parts. After listening, Banner shook his head instead and asked a counter-question. Then you tell me, what is good and what is bad, and how should we distinguish between good and bad? He turned around and tapped the genetic sequence fragment brought up on the screen, saying in a serious tone. What you think is a loss of control is not genetic collapse, it is precisely its evolution. The spider genes are deeply merging with your human genes. Although the process is unstable, surviving it means a metamorphosis. Forcibly excising what you consider the bad parts, is tantamount to strangling the possibility of evolution along with it. Peter was stunned. He had always regarded the out-of-control genes as a time bomb, never imagining that this was actually evolution. I can help you make a stabilizer to suppress the restlessness and help you safely get through the fusion period. Banner pushed up his glasses and shifted the topic, saying, "But let's get this straight first. The potion only plays an auxiliary role. Whether you can completely control the genes in your body and complete the final metamorphosis ultimately depends on yourself." Peter froze for a few seconds, then nodded heavily. "I understand. Thank you. As long as it can be stabilized, I can get through it myself." Banner said no more and turned to rummage through the testing equipment, but remembering something, he reminded. "This gadget in my hand is what suppresses the Hulk. If one day you don't see it in my hands, don't hesitate at all, turn around and run as far as you can." Lin Yi and Peter looked at each other and smiled sheepishly. Both of them knew the terrifying nature of the Hulk, and nodded hurriedly. For the next hour, Banner gave Peter a full set of genetic tests. Sampling, analysis, and data comparison. "The preliminary data is all here. The fusion is deeper than I expected, and the stabilizer has to be custom formulated." Banner stared at the genetic sequence map on the screen, his brows slightly locked. "You guys come back the day after tomorrow, and I'll make the first version of the potion first." "Great. Thank you. Thank you so much." Lin Yi and Peter thanked him repeatedly. Host detected triggering a classic scene check-in, first contact with Bruce Banner. Basic reward issued. Mental resistance plus 20, biological gene knowledge reserve basic. Extra challenge completed. Gained Banner's trust, obtained a treatment promise, rewards doubled. Unlocked. System space expanded to 30 cubic meters, repair gel times 5. Listening to the system prompt in his head, Lin Yi felt wonderful inside. This wave wasn't a loss. Not only did he find a doctor for Peter, but he also got a free wave of rewards. It was a massive profit. By the time the two left the laboratory, it was already noon, and the sunlight was just right. Walking on the road, Peter's steps were even lighter than usual. "Do you think I can really complete the metamorphosis?" He couldn't help asking, his tone carrying a little bit of anticipation. "The big shot with 7 doctoral degrees has said so, could it be fake?" Lin Yi patted his shoulder. "Let's go, let's celebrate. I'll treat you to the cafeteria for lunch." Peter smiled, and just as he was about to speak, his spider sense suddenly pricked slightly. He turned his head sharply to look at the experimental building behind him, but only saw students coming and going, with nothing abnormal at all. "What's wrong?" Lin Yi asked. "It's nothing." Peter frowned, thinking he was just being too sensitive, maybe it was just an illusion. Lin Yi pulled Peter toward the cafeteria. "Forget it, I haven't eaten in a university cafeteria for a long time. This time I've gotta eat more." The two didn't notice that in a hidden corner of the laboratory, a masked figure silently retreated into the shadows and said a sentence in Japanese into the communicator in their hand. "Target confirmed. Bruce Banner, prepare for the next step of action." On the other end of the communicator, an old and gloomy woman's voice came slowly. "Very good. Contact that woman, and proceed according to plan." Long queues were lined up at the windows of the university cafeteria, and the clattering of dinner plates mixed with the chatting and laughing of students, making it bustling and noisy. Lin Yi carried 2 dinner plates and squeezed out of the crowd, placing them heavily opposite Peter. Hey, it was a combination of Chinese and Western cuisine. Sweet and sour pork ribs, a beef burger, plus 2 portions of French fries were laid out densely, making Peter's eyelids twitch straight away. "Didn't you say we'd just eat something casual?" He picked up the burger and said in a low voice, "Ordering this much is too wasteful. To celebrate our first victory in seeking medical treatment, shouldn't we order some heavy dishes to prop up the scene?" Lin Yi took a bite of a rib and said vaguely, "Normally when I deliver food, I can't even bear to add a sausage for myself. Today, I'm basking in the light of your gene evolution to improve my impoverished diet. Eat quickly, eat quickly, this sweet and sour pork ribs is quite authentic, it's delicious." Lin Yi shoved food into his mouth hard, not forgetting to greet Peter to eat. Peter took a bite of the burger, and the aroma of cheese spread out in his mouth. On the day agreed upon for picking up the medicine, Lin Yi and Peter snuck into the university campus once again. Just as they walked downstairs to the experimental building, Peter's steps paused abruptly, and his spider sense took effect immediately. He lowered his voice. No, there is murderous intent in the building, and more than one. Hearing this, Lin Yi looked up and very clearly spotted a few sneaky black shadows swaying above the third-floor window. The corner of his mouth twitched. No way, how can I be so unlucky? Trouble pops up everywhere I go. The two immediately stopped talking and stealthily climbed up to the third floor. The door lock of the laboratory had long been pried open, left ajar by a slit, and from inside came the rustling sound of rummaging through things, mixed with a few lowered sentences in Japanese. Lin Yi's ears twitched, and he muttered strangely, "What the, why is it still those Japs?" But Lin Yi wasn't afraid at all. He pushed open the door and walked straight in, deliberately shouting loudly. "I say, you guys inside, what are you rummaging through so seriously? Do you want me to turn on a flashlight for you to see? Stealing all the way to a university, you guys must have quite a lot of performance appraisal pressure, huh?" The masked people dressed as ninjas inside the room instantly turned their heads. Lin Yi was startled. "Are you guys playing cosplay?" But these ninjas said nothing, instantly drawing their katanas with a swish. The leader let out a low growl in incomprehensible Japanese, and several ninjas split into two paths and pounced. "Yo, getting anxious now." Lin Yi sidestepped to dodge the slashing blade, shooting web fluid from his fingertips to wrap around the blade. "Can't steal, so you switched to open robbery, huh?" Peter simultaneously jumped out from the side, his web slinging smooth like flowing water, entangling the ankles of two ninjas and giving a fierce yank, causing the two of them to crash down into a pile with a thud. These ninjas were indeed formidable, rolling up from the ground to instantly change formations and encircle from front and back. Lin Yi made some neat footwork, spotted a flaw in the leader, and smashed a fist into the back of his head, causing the man to stumble forward 2 steps and crash loudly against the lab bench. Lin Yi shook his hand and taunted, "With this kind of amateur skill, you guys had better practice more." Just at this moment, a muffled sound suddenly came from the inner room, followed by the shattering sound of instruments smashing onto the floor. Peter's expression changed. Dr. Banner is inside. Just as the two were about to rush inside, the leader of the ninjas suddenly let out a weird laugh, pulled a bamboo tube from his chest, and smashed it onto the ground, causing purple smoke to instantly explode. "Holy crap, playing dirty." Lin Yi held his breath and hurriedly pulled Peter back. Several flashes of cold light shot out from the smoke, heading straight for the vital spots of the two. Peter had quick eyes and fast hands, continuously firing web fluids from his wrists to deflect all the kunai with clanging sounds. But the smoke was too thick, making it impossible to see the situation inside at all. Right at this moment, a suppressed low growl came from the inner room, carrying an extremely violent aura, causing even the floor to vibrate slightly. Lin Yi's heart skipped a beat. Oh no, could Banner be turning into Hulk? The purple smoke gradually dissipated, and several ninjas had retreated to the window edge, their exposed eyes extremely vicious. The low growls in the inner room grew more frequent, shaking the ceiling and causing dust to flutter down. "Dr. Banner," Peter shouted, and just as he was about to rush forward, he saw Banner walking out while supporting himself against the doorframe. His complexion was pale, the veins on his forehead bulging, and his teeth clenching loudly, clearly desperately suppressing something. "Not good. Some energy is drilling into my head. Hulk wants to come out." Banner gritted his teeth while holding his head, squeezing words through the gaps in his teeth. "Those people just now stole the Hulk inhibitor from my hands. You guys run quickly." Before his words fell, roar. Banner let out a deafening roar, green spreading across his entire body at a speed visible to the naked eye, his muscles bulging crazily to tear his shirt apart, transforming in the blink of an eye into a Hulk over 2 meters tall. However, the pants were not torn. Save. Age. Hulk. His eyes were filled with violent scarlet, and he raised his hand to smash a punch straight at Peter, who was closest to him. "It's over, it's Hulk." Peter hurriedly shot web fluid to swing away, and Hulk's fist smashed into the ground. Seeing that he missed Peter, Hulk raised his hand to pursue, about to smash into the lab bench. On top of it was still the stabilizer stock solution prepared for Peter, and if it got smashed, everything would be in vain. Lin Yi immediately rushed forward 2 steps, shouting at the top of his lungs. "Stop it, Hulk, do me a favor. Detected that the host has triggered a classic famous scene internet meme. Meme amplification takes effect. Temporary buff. Potent mental anchoring plus forced stiffness for 20 seconds. Target sanity retention increased by 30%, lasting 3 minutes. An invisible ripple swept across Hulk's entire body, his thrown punch abruptly stopping in midair, a trace of confusion flashing through his scarlet eyes, and his violent momentum instantly getting stuck. Right now, Peter sees the opening, shooting dense spider webs to entangle Hulk's legs. But Hulk's strength was too great. Not only could he not pull him, but he instead stumbled 2 steps. Lin Yi hurriedly wanted to go up to help. Just at this moment, the ventilation grate overhead smashed to the ground with a loud clank. A man wearing a trench coat jumped down from the vent holding a submachine gun. On his chest was a huge white skull, his gaze extremely cold and hard. Punisher Frank. Lin Yi felt surprise mixed with doubt. How did he appear here? Could it be that he was chasing those little Japanese fools? However, Frank's entrance style was quite special, refusing to use the door and insisting on crawling through pipes. Frank ran straight to the window. Those ninjas had long since taken advantage of the previous chaos to jump out the window and run away. Those grandsons ran away again. These brats from the hand are so hard to catch. So those were the little Japanese fools from the hand. No wonder they were all dressed like ninjas. Lin Yi leaned over to Frank's side, rubbing his chin as he spoke. Frank glanced expressionlessly at Lin Yi. Stay away from me. The gun in my hand doesn't kill delivery guys. Lin Yi chuckled, still wanting to continue questioning Frank. Peter on the side shouted out. Stop chatting over there, hurry over and help me hold down Hulk. Lin Yi patted his head, look at that memory of his, forgetting that Peter was still holding Hulk all by himself, and said to Frank. Give me a hand, will ya? As soon as the words fell, Hulk had recovered from the stiffness, shaking off the spider webs on his body with an angry roar, and swung a fist toward Peter. Frank cursed under his breath, starting to fire the submachine gun in his hand at Hulk. Bullets hit Hulk without even showing a white spot, but they also hindered Hulk's movements. Except they almost shot Peter. Peter hurriedly dodged, jumping to Frank's side. Hey, you almost hit me. Frank ignored him and continued firing crazily at Banner. Lin Yi shouted at him. Bullets are useless against Hulk. Then he signaled Peter with his eyes to cooperate with him, and jumped in front of Hulk. Impulse as the devil, Hulk. Detected that the host has triggered the classic soothing internet meme amplification takes effect. Temporary buff. Mental cooling force field, target's berserk level continues to drop, lasting 2 minutes. An invisible force field spread out, Hulk's roar noticeably lower by a few degrees, and his movements also slower. Lin Yi seized the opportunity to rush over and join Peter, using the heavy refrigerator nearby to forcibly wedge Hulk between the corner of the wall and the cabinet. Although Hulk was still roaring and struggling, his movements slowed down significantly, and the scarlet in his eyes faded bit by bit. After a stalemate of a full 10 minutes, Hulk's roar gradually turned into muffled groans, his massive body slowly shrinking, and finally turning back into Banner, who was covered in cold sweat, collapsing to sit on the ground and panting heavily. Phew. Lin Yi was also exhausted to death, leaning against the lab bench and panting directly. Good grief, this is even tireder than me delivering 100 orders a day. Banner took a long time to recover before speaking. Are you guys alright? I almost dragged you down. It's fine, we're all completely intact, just almost sent to see God by a punch from the green fatty. Although Lin Yi didn't stop talking, inside he felt extremely terrified. Hulk's strength was terrifyingly strong. If he had been even slightly careless, he really would have gone to see God. He didn't have Spider-Man's freakish physical fitness and healing abilities, nor did he have protagonist plot armor. Furthermore, getting hit once really hurt. Dr. Banner, why did Hulk become so frantic? You said earlier that some energy burrowed into your head, what's going on? Peter stepped forward to help Banner up, asking with a puzzled expression. Banner nodded and explained with lingering fear. After those masked men snatched the Hulk restraint device off my hand, a certain power affected me. That's why I couldn't suppress Hulk. In the plot preview, Banner indeed turned into Hulk and started fighting with Peter and Frank. There was indeed a wave of energy fluctuation. So it turned out this energy fluctuation was what affected Hulk. It seemed that the hand was connected to the person who emitted this energy. Lin Yi chimed in, "What are you going to do now? Will Hulk come out to cause destruction from time to time? We can't stand fighting Hulk every other day." Banner shook his head, walked over to a nearby cabinet, and took out a small device. This is a backup Hulk restraint device, but its effect is relatively weak. I don't know if it can hold out for a while. Then we can't stay here anymore. Those ninjas from the hand know you have a backup, they'll definitely come back to grab it. A cold and hard voice came from the window. Frank was wiping the submachine gun in his hands. Looking at the unfamiliar Frank, Banner's eyes were full of doubt. "Who are you?" Frank didn't give much of a self-introduction, just coldly tossing out his name, "My name is Frank." Then, with two clicking sounds of his fingers, he locked the magazine tightly. "I've been chasing this gang of ninjas for a long time. If you guys hadn't made such a big fuss here, I would have taken them all down long ago." "Hey, you can't put it that way." Lin Yi was displeased. "This is self-defense on our part, and Hulk lost control temporarily. How did it become us making a fuss? Besides, if we hadn't held them up, they would have vanished halfway through you drilling into the pipe." Peter listened from the side with twitching corners of his mouth, fearing that Frank would aim his gun at Lin Yi the next second, and hurriedly tried to smooth things over. Let's not talk about this for now. We can't stay here. Where are we going?" Banner shook his head. He didn't want to drag others into this. "If you guys have nowhere to go, come back to Hell's Kitchen with me." Frank took over the conversation, slinging his gun back behind him. "I have a safe house there, it's extremely hidden." Despite how icy Punisher looked, he was actually quite kind-hearted, thinking of taking them along. Lin Yi whistled. "Hell's Kitchen. I know that place well. Does this mean we've just escaped the wolf's den only to enter the tiger's lair?" The main theme is knowing there are tigers in the mountain, yet heading straight for the tiger mountain, right? "You don't have to go." Frank coldly threw out a sentence. "How could that be?" Lin Yi slapped his thigh, righteous and stern. "Our teammates are all moving. Can I just leave you guys behind and ignore it? Besides, the food delivery market in Hell's Kitchen is a blue ocean. Going over there happens to let me expand my business, killing two birds with one stone." Peter couldn't help but chuckle, and the heavy feeling in his heart dissipated by more than half. Turning around and seeing Banner nod, he also agreed. Right now there really was no better choice. The hand was eyeing them covetously in the dark, and Banner could lose control at any time. Staying in the densely populated college town was too dangerous. The few of them immediately set to work packing up. Banner tucked away the core data hard drive and picked out a few essential reagents and semi-finished products. Peter helped pack the fragile laboratory equipment. As for Lin Yi, he transformed into a moving expert, packing up all the undamaged healing gel, medical cotton balls, and even a few packs of unopened energy bars from the laboratory. He simply wouldn't leave empty-handed even as a thief. "Are you moving or ransacking the place?" Peter looked at him stuffing even disposable gloves into his pockets, somewhat speechless. "You have to be meticulous when living life," Lin Yi said righteously. "Buying these things outside costs money, doesn't it? When we get to the safe house, we can use them to treat wounds and stuff. Diligence and thrift are traditional virtues of the Chinese nation, understand?" Frank watched from the side, his eyelids twitching uncontrollably. He finally figured it out. The Asian youth in front of him was good at fighting, but his witty banter was truly peerless. Before leaving, Lin Yi glanced back at the wrecked laboratory and smacked his lips. What a pity, such a good laboratory was demolished just like that. "Dr. Banner, your apartment deposit is probably not going to be refunded. It was temporarily allocated by the school anyway." Banner sighed and smiled somewhat helplessly. "At worst, I'll explain it to the school board later and just say Hulk smashed it. What does it have to do with me, Bruce Banner?" "Hey, that's right." Lin Yi gave him a thumbs up. "Responsibilities must be clearly divided." The group sneaked out of the back door of the laboratory building under the cover of night. Frank's beat-up van was parked not far away, its paint almost entirely peeled off, looking pretty much like a scrapped car. The van wobbled away from the college town and drove into Hell's Kitchen. "I say, Big Brother Frank, is your safe house reliable? Don't let us get completely surrounded right after we step in," Lin Yi asked, holding a lollipop he picked up along the way in his mouth. Frank didn't even turn his head, tossing back 2 words, "Shut up." Holding back his laughter, Peter muttered quietly, "He doesn't seem to like talking much." Normal, ruthless people are all like this. The main motif is being ruthless with few words, fewer lines mean higher coolness. Lin Yi said, lowering his voice. The safe house was hidden in an abandoned apartment building. Lin Yi jumped out of the car, looked up, and saw that it looked even more shabby than his rented apartment in Queens. The corners of his mouth twitched. "I mean, boss, isn't your safe house a bit too rustic? I thought there would be some high-tech stuff or something, but it ends up looking even more dilapidated than the apartment we rent." "It's hidden here," Frank said concisely. "The shabbier it is, the less people pay attention." "Fine, I know this is hiding in plain sight." Lin Yi nodded. Trigger daily punch in task. Move into the Hell's Kitchen safe house. Basic reward. Stamina +5, system storage space expanded by 5 cubic meters. Notice. Host has entered the core sphere of influence of the hand, subsequent risk level increased, please be prepared. Pushing open the rusted iron door, the inside turned out to be a different world altogether. Weapon racks, medical kits, and encrypted computers were lined up in a row, and a makeshift laboratory bench was set up in the corner. Lin Yi walked over and squatted beside the weapon rack, looking around. This armory was 10 times more abundant than his own delivery box. Just as he picked up a tactical dagger and waited twice, his arm was hit by a thick stack of documents tossed over by Frank. The distribution of the hand's strongholds, and their recent movements. Frank pulled up a chair and sat down, his voice still very cold. "Not only are they eyeing Dr. Banner, but recently they've also been capturing mutants everywhere." Mutants. Peter was stunned for a moment. Hasn't New York always not had many mutants? A large batch suddenly popped up in the past half year. Frank's finger tapped on the photo in the documents. In the photo, a teenager with glowing blue eyes was pinned to the ground by people in uniforms. The Department of Damage Control is also arresting people everywhere under the pretext of registration. Once they're dragged in, there's no further word. Lin Yi's heart skipped a beat, and the entire puzzle instantly connected in his mind. The person manipulating that energy probably wanted to use Hulk's destructive power to throw the situation into chaos and rescue the captured mutants. The room quieted down for a moment. Seeing this, Lin Yi brushed it off with a laugh. "All right, even if the sky falls, we still need to eat first. We can't starve ourselves before fighting the villains, that would be way too embarrassing. Is there anything to eat near the safe house? We surely can't be chewing on compressed rations, right?" Frank didn't speak. He tossed over 2 boxes of frozen pizza and pointed at the old oven in the corner. Lin Yi weighed the pizza box in his hand, his mouth twitching. "No way, is this the Punisher's midnight snack? I thought you were hiding a Manchu Han Imperial feast here, but it turns out to be the exact same dietary standard as my rented apartment." Despite saying that, he still rolled up his sleeves to bake the pizza. The oven hummed as it spun, and the aroma slowly spread, finally easing the tense atmosphere a bit. Soon, the 4 of them gathered around the broken table and began munching on the pizza. Frank ate the fastest, finishing a piece in 2 bites, and then got up to check the surveillance monitors, where real-time footage of the hand's various strongholds flickered across the screens. "We can't just squat here until the serum is made, right?" Lin Yi bit into his pizza and leaned over, eyeing the dense red dots on the screen. "The hand captures mutants outside every day. If we shrink back here and take hits passively, it's way too embarrassing." Frank tapped his fingertip against the 3 smallest red dots on the screen. 3 outer strongholds, the fewest personnel, and no heavy weapons. "We'll uproot them first and cut off the hand's scouts." "Sounds good to me." Lin Yi snapped his fingers. "We'll practice on the small fry first and gradually devour them. Otherwise, once they gather their forces and attack, the 4 of us will be trapped in the underground room like dumplings in a pot." Peter also nodded. "I'll go with you guys. Dr. Banner is in the safe house preparing the serum, so we'll be quick and head right back." Meanwhile, in an abandoned warehouse at the west side docks, the sea breeze carrying a smell of rust poured through the broken windows. Madame Gao leaned on her cane as she stood by the second-floor railing, watching the ninjas below shove a newly captured mutant teenager into an iron cage, her old face devoid of any expression. The ninja behind her dropped to one knee and reported in a low voice. Madam, Bruce Banner was taken away by the Punisher and Spider-Man, and we don't know where they went. Trash. Madame Gao's voice was extremely sharp. You couldn't even keep an eye on a few people. What does Miss Chin say on her end? Miss Chin says we must lure Banner to the city center within 3 days. She wants to force out Hulk. The ninja paused and added another sentence. There's also news. Tombstone has escaped from prison and has already contacted Tarantula and Boomerang, saying they want revenge on Spider-Man and the Punisher. Madame Gao narrowed her eyes slightly, then revealed a sinister smile. Oh, perfect. We don't have to do it ourselves. Pass some news to Tombstone and let him wade into these murky waters first. The more havoc he wreaks, the more chaotic things will get for Spider-Man, and the easier Miss Chin's plan will succeed. We can just sit back and reap the profits. Yes. The night wind whipped the waves against the dock. The teenager in the iron cage curled up in the corner trembling, and these murky waters of New York were becoming more and more chaotic. Inside the safe house, Lin Yi finished his last piece of pizza and patted the crumbs off his hands. It's settled. Tomorrow daytime we'll scout the location first, and at night we'll move out to uproot the stronghold. We must take them by surprise and finish it quickly. Frank didn't speak, which was considered tacit approval. Banner pushed up his glasses and plunged back into reagent formulation, looking like he intended to pull an all-nighter. Peter leaned against the wall, resting his eyes and using breathing techniques to steady the restless genes within his body. Lin Yi paid them no mind, went straight to lie down on the large bed, and fell fast asleep. Lin Yi bit into a freshly bought hot dog and mingled with the crowd alongside Peter, walking toward the Hands stronghold. Frank wasn't with them. He had detoured to the side alley half an hour earlier. Throughout the whole process, he only bounced a few words through the communicator, being extremely tight-lipped. I'm telling you, Frank's communication efficiency would get him complaints from customers on a food delivery platform for slow message replies. Lin Yi said vaguely while biting into his hot dog. If the two of us team up with him for long, will we evolve into two-word mantra masters in the future? Peter held back his laugh and replied in a suppressed voice. I think it's possible. When he asks you what to eat, then, you'll reply to him with, whatever. When he asks how to fight, you'll reply with, charge and head on. The two looked at each other and held back their joy, and the tense reconnaissance atmosphere relaxed a lot. The first outer stronghold was disguised as a freight transfer station. The rusted large iron gate was tightly shut. Two punks with cigarettes in their mouths wandered back and forth at the entrance, and two crooked surveillance cameras were installed on the top of the wall. Lin Yi took a couple of glances and got the picture. The guards were very slack, at most just a dozen people. I'll go deliver a takeout and check out the inside. Lin Yi picked up the takeout box he brought with him and gave Peter a wink. You keep watch at the alley opposite. Give me a hand gesture if anyone comes out. Peter nodded and leaned sideways into the shadows of the alley. Lin Yi swaggered over carrying the takeout box, knocking on the door while shouting. The breakfast ordered online has arrived. The guard at the door originally wanted to chase him away, but upon hearing there was food, he cursed and opened a crack. Lin Yi took the opportunity to squeeze inside, flashing an apologetic smile and saying, finding the front desk to sign for it. His eyes scanned extremely fast. 2 trucks covered with black cloth were parked in the courtyard, and 2 teenagers were curled up in an iron cage in the corner, who should be the newly captured mutants. Patrolling ninjas plus punks totaled 12 or 13 people, with no heavy weapons. In less than 3 minutes total, he finished signing and backed out, making an, okay, hand gesture to Peter at the alley. Just this many people. Even more pathetic than I imagined. Turning the street corner, Lin Yi curled his lips. Then tonight's battle should be quick, and we can finish it swiftly. The two walked toward the safe house. However, suddenly Peter's footsteps came to an abrupt stop. He saw 2 familiar figures. MJ with her high ponytail was by the newsstand, head lowered as she flipped through a photography magazine. Ned was holding an old camera, gesturing at the old building across the street, muttering under his breath, exactly the same as 4 years ago. Peter's breathing instantly slowed by half a beat, and his fingertips uncontrollably turned a pale cyan. Once his emotions fluctuated, his genes became restless along with them. He instinctively shrank back behind Lin Yi. 4 years. Countless times in his dreams he had seen these two friends, dreamed of the three of them squeezing into the cafeteria complaining about homework, eating sandwiches on the rooftop and watching the sunset. But when they were truly right in front of him, he didn't even have the courage to step forward and say, "Hi." The spell had erased all memories. To them, he was just a complete stranger passing by. Lin Yi glanced along his gaze, instantly understanding in his heart. He reached out and bumped his arm, deliberately interrupting loudly. Let's go, let's go. If we go back any later, Frank's going to arrange compressed rations for our lunch. That stuff is choking dry, and I definitely don't want to chew on it with cold water. As if waking from a dream, Peter quickly lowered his head and followed closely behind, though his steps became a bit floaty. Ned moved his camera away from the old building and happened to see two figures flash by across the street. He froze for a moment and instinctively raised the lens to aim at that side. But the crowd was surging, and those two figures were already long gone. Strange, he muttered, hanging the camera back around his neck. What's strange? MJ walked over from the newsstand, holding a photography magazine in her arms. Just now, it seemed like someone was watching us over there, but they disappeared in the blink of an eye. Ned scratched his head. Maybe I saw it wrong. MJ didn't care much and shrugged. Let's go. If we don't go back to finish our homework, we'll get yelled at by Professor tomorrow again. Ned nodded, threw that strange feeling to the back of his mind, and followed MJ toward the subway station. Night shrouded Hell's Kitchen. Lin Yi crouched on the rooftop opposite the freight transfer station, swallowed the last bite of the cold hot dog, and gave Peter next to him a wink. Is Frank in place yet? Peter pressed his headset and nodded. He's positioned in the side alley, saying whenever we make a move, he'll flank in from the back door. All right, then let's hurry up. Lin Yi stuffed the hot dog wrapper into his pocket. I'll count to 3, you handle the surveillance on the left, and I'll take care of those two punks at the entrance. 3, 2, 1. Before his voice fell, Lin Yi had already pounced down from the rooftop. Before the two punks at the entrance could react, their mouths and hands were bound by 2 strands of spider silk, and they collapsed limply to the ground. Peter followed closely behind, kicking the surveillance camera on the wall askew with a flying kick. Pretty fast. Lin Yi gave him a thumbs up, then kicked open the big iron door. Takeout is here. The courtyard instantly erupted into chaos. 12 or 13 punks and ninjas emerged from various corners, some wielding steel pipes, and some having already drawn katanas. Lin Yi sidestepped to dodge the slashing blade, casually shot out 2 strands of spider silk to entangle the ninja's legs, and gave a fierce yank. Off you go. The ninja plunged directly into the pile of cargo containers next to him, making a muffled thud. Peter swung through midair, kicking 2 punks away, and upon landing, casually flicked a strand of spider silk to stick another guy trying to sneak attack onto the wall. Your service attitude is not good, Lin Yi said with his mouth, while his hands were not idle at all. A strong man raised a steel pipe and smashed it over. Lin Yi dodged sideways, seized the opponent's wrist and pulled it toward his arms, driving his knee fiercely into the opponent's stomach. The strong man let out an ow, and doubled up like a shrimp. Lin Yi snatched his steel pipe and backhanded a blow to the back of his head with the stick. This thing works pretty well, thanks. Just then, the back door was kicked open, and Frank rushed in holding a submachine gun. Get down. With a few bursts of gunfire like ta-ta-ta, the 3 ninjas who still wanted to resist fell to the ground in response. The remaining punks saw there was even a submachine gun, and their legs went soft. I surrender. I surrender. Don't shoot. I surrender. In less than 5 minutes, the entire stronghold was cleared out. Very good. Wrap up. We can still have a midnight snack when we go back. The 3 searched through the documents and equipment in the stronghold and evacuated, taking advantage of the night. The remaining ninjas and thugs were left for police to arrest. At the same time, in the abandoned warehouse at the west side docks, Madame Gao stood in front of the surveillance screen leaning on a cane, looking at the footage transmitted back from the freight transfer station, the wrinkles on her old face deepening a bit more. They are going to uproot our strongholds one by one. The ninja behind her lowered his head and reported in a low voice. Madame Gao sneered. Interesting. Thinking that uprooting a few peripheral strongholds can shake the hand. Naive. She turned around and looked at another screen. On the screen, 3 figures were moving toward the direction of Hell's Kitchen. Let them uproot. I'd like to see if they have what it takes. In an underground boxing ring in Brooklyn, the lighting was exceptionally dim. Tombstone sat on the dilapidated sofa, his 2-meter-plus body filling the entire sofa completely. Last time after Lin Yi and Peter trapped him, he was thrown into prison by police. But unfortunately, prison could entrap him, and with Kingpin's secret operation, he broke right out of prison. He summarized the reason for his last failure, which was because Lin Yi and Spider-Man ganged up on him alone. So after getting out, he summoned his 2 top subordinates over. Standing next to him were 2 figures. The one on the left had a hunched figure with several sharp bone spurs sticking out of his back, like a mutated giant spider. Tarantula. The one on the right was a scrawny Aussie, spinning a serrated boomerang in his hand, with a malicious smile hanging on the corner of his mouth. Boomerang. Boss Tombstone, are we just going to hide like this? Tarantula's voice was extremely hoarse and harsh. Can you swallow this breath? What can we do if we can't swallow it? Tombstone said in a low voice. Spider-Man and Punisher have teamed up, plus the takeout delivering scum. With just the people we have now, we can't beat them at all. Boomerang tossed the serrated boomerang in his hand up and caught it again, saying casually. Then we're just going to wait blindly like this. I don't want to waste away in the underground room until I'm old. Tombstone didn't speak, his eyes narrowing into slits. Just then, the door of the underground room was pushed open. Who is it? The 3 of them immediately became alert. A ninja dressed in black walked in, holding a sealed envelope in his hand. People from the Hand. Mr. Tombstone, Madame Gao asked me to deliver a gift. Tombstone took the envelope, tore open the seal, and inside was a stack of photos. The photos showed scenes of Lin Yi, Peter, and Frank raiding the Hand's stronghold. Madame Gao said that if you are willing, the Hand can cooperate with you. The ninja bowed slightly. When they attack our next stronghold, we can join forces to defeat them. Oh, Tombstone looked at the photos, the corners of his mouth slowly spreading into a ferocious smile. Interesting. He slapped the photos onto the table and stood up, his body of over 2 meters blocking out the light like a small mountain. Tell Madame Gao, I'll take this deal. All right. The black-clad ninja nodded and slowly retreated. Tarantula and Boomerang exchanged glances, both seeing excitement in each other's eyes. Then shouldn't we get ready? Boomerang clenched the boomerang he was spinning in his hand tight. I haven't stretched my muscles in a long time, I almost forgot what it feels like when this thing flies out. What's the rush? Tombstone walked to the weapon rack by the wall, picked up a modified shotgun, and with a click pushed the magazine home. Spider-Man, Punisher, and that takeout delivering kid. He turned around, his eyes extremely cold. This time, I'm going to let you know how formidable I am. Tarantula licked his lips, the bone spurs gleaming coldly in the dim light. Boomerang tucked 3 boomerangs into the holster at his waist and whistled. Then we just sit and wait for guests to come knocking. Tombstone didn't answer, just slung the shotgun over his shoulder and strode out. Lin Yi and the other 2 returned to the safe house, and as soon as they pushed open the door, they saw Banner leaning over the experimental table, shaking a pale blue reagent tube in his hand. Back already. He placed the reagent tube on the table, pushed up his glasses, and his eye sockets were somewhat dark, obviously having stayed up all night. Peter, this is the stabilizer formulated for you. Peter took the reagent tube, looked at the blue liquid inside, and felt somewhat nervous. Can it stabilize my genes just by drinking it? Banner shook his head, and once again emphasized with a serious tone. This can only play a temporary stabilizing role. Whether the spider genes inside your body can ultimately complete the transformation and fusion relies entirely on yourself. He pointed at Peter's chest. Your mindset and willpower, as well as your understanding of this power, are the keys. The potion can help you suppress the restlessness, but it won't complete the transformation for you. Peter was silent for a few seconds, nodded, and carefully put the potion away into his pocket. I will work hard. Lin Yi silently watched Peter. He believed that Peter could definitely do it, otherwise he wouldn't be Spider-Man. He took out 3 cans of cola from the refrigerator, tossed one each to Peter and Frank, took a gulp himself, and asked Frank. Big brother Frank, which stronghold should we go uproot next? In Lin Yi's view, they still needed to eliminate the hand as a threat as soon as possible and find the person behind the scenes manipulating the abnormal energy. Otherwise, once Banner couldn't hold on and turned into Hulk again, it would be too dangerous. Frank was organizing his arsenal on the side, and said coldly and sternly, "After dealing with that stronghold tonight, I noticed someone following us in the dark. We must have been targeted." Lin Yi said thoughtfully, "No wonder you brought us in so many circles tonight. I thought your memory was so bad that you even forgot the way home." Frank immediately glared coldly at Lin Yi. Lin Yi immediately shrank his neck and quickly took a sip of cola. "Big brother, please continue, I won't interrupt." Only then did Frank continue. "Now the other strongholds of the hand have definitely increased their defense efforts. I suggest we wait a few days before making a move, and I'll prepare more weapons and ammunition." Lin Yi was also afraid that the enemy would be on guard and difficult to deal with, so he nodded, "All right, let's do as you say, big brother." Then, except for Frank who was still organizing firearms, the others all went to rest. Since being idle was still being idle, the next day, Lin Yi returned to Queens and started delivering food again on his little electric scooter. Being a hero still required making money to eat. Before having a stable source of income, he still had to go back to his old trade. Thinking that he had been upholding justice alongside Spider-Man and the Punisher, and even met the old Avengers member Banner, yet he was still having such a miserable time. It really was a disgrace to other time travelers. Peter also went to do his part-time job, leaving only Banner hiding in Frank's safe house. 2 or 3 days passed just like that. Lin Yi and Peter were busy chasing US dollars, while on the other side, Tombstone and the others were extremely irritable and anxious from waiting. They had thought Lin Yi and the others would immediately attack the second stronghold of the hand, but after waiting left and right, they just didn't see anyone coming. Tombstone stood with a gloomy expression in front of Madame Gao. "Madame Gao, 2 days have already passed, why haven't they come yet? Is your idea reliable or not? We aren't being played by you, are we?" Madame Gao leaned on her cane with an expressionless face. "Mr. Tombstone, stay calm. They will come sooner or later." "Sooner or later," Tombstone sneered, "I've already waited for 2 days. If they never come, does that mean we have to keep waiting here all the time? Is Mr. Tombstone in such a rush?" Madame Gao replied coldly. Tombstone slammed a fist onto the table beside him, and the table instantly shattered into pieces. "I don't have time to waste here with you all." Seeing this, the surrounding ninjas all drew their weapons and stepped forward. Tarantula, Boomerang, and Tombstone's thugs were not polite either, confronting them. Madame Gao's expression didn't change. She waved her hand to dismiss her subordinate ninjas. She certainly didn't want to have an internal conflict with Tombstone before even eliminating Lin Yi and the others. Miss Chin's plan was reaching a critical stage. "Mr. Tombstone, if you really can't wait anymore, I happen to have a good idea here." Tombstone narrowed his eyes and asked, "What idea?" Madame Gao's face gradually turned cold. "Aren't Spider-Man and the others known as superheroes, protecting ordinary people every day? Then you should go catch some ordinary people and force them over. They won't just watch these people die." Tombstone clapped. As expected of Madame Gao, "As vicious as I, Tombstone." He turned to Tarantula and Boomerang and said, "Did you hear that? Why aren't you going yet? The more people you catch, the better." That night, Tarantula and Boomerang took thugs onto the street and quietly captured a dozen or so people back. Tombstone looked at the hostages tied together below and nodded with satisfaction. "All right, it's time to invite some guests," he said to Tarantula and Boomerang. "Send a message to all the media you can contact. Tell them there are a dozen or so hostages here, and tell Spider-Man, the Punisher, and that delivery guy fool to get their asses over here before noon tomorrow. If they don't come, haha, say we'll kill one every half hour until they show up. You have a new food delivery order, please process it in time." The prompt sound on his phone rang continuously. Lin Yi skillfully clicked to accept the order, and then turned into a narrow alley to take a shortcut. Triggered daily quest. Food delivery. Today's objective. Complete 10 food delivery orders. Reward. Physique +2, cash reward $200. The corners of Lin Yi's mouth curved up. The system was quite considerate, even giving rewards for delivering food. He twisted the throttle, and the little electric scooter darted out with a whoosh. 1 order, 2 orders, 3 orders. Lin Yi's efficiency was ridiculously high. Max level spider sense allowed him to anticipate traffic flow at intersections in advance, and organic webbing generation allowed him to take shortcuts directly from rooftops during traffic jams. In less than half an hour, all 10 food delivery orders were completed. Daily quest completed. Rewards distributed. Physique +2, cash $200. Lin Yi looked at his account balance and whistled with satisfaction. Not bad, I'll add a sausage to my hot dog today. He had just parked his electric scooter by the roadside, preparing to buy a hot dog to reward himself, when his phone suddenly vibrated. It was a message from Peter. Look at the news. Something big has happened. News. Lin Yi opened the browser. On the homepage of the Daily Bugle, a bolded headline popped out. Hostage crisis emerges in Hell's Kitchen. Mysterious organization openly threatens Spider-Man. He clicked into it, and the text read, "This morning, gunfire suddenly broke out from an abandoned warehouse in Hell's Kitchen. According to witnesses, more than a dozen civilians were tied up inside the warehouse. The armed thugs claimed they were waiting for Spider-Man, the Punisher, and a delivery guy to arrive, otherwise they would execute one hostage every half hour." As of press time, 2 NYPD officers had been injured while trying to approach. The police had cordoned off the surrounding blocks, but the thugs threatened to kill anyone immediately if they launched a forcible assault. The Daily Bugle will continue to follow this matter. Lin Yi's expression sank. He continued to scroll down and saw another news report from the New York Daily News. Hostage crisis in Hell's Kitchen continues to ferment. Police are helpless. As of now, the hostage crisis has lasted for 3 hours. The thugs claimed to execute one hostage every half hour, and 2 civilians have been confirmed dead. The NYPD has mobilized the SWAT team, but dared not launch a rash forcible assault due to the thugs' threats to massacre all hostages. The mayor's office issued a statement urging citizens to remain calm while condemning the atrocities of the thugs. Scrolling further down was the headline of the Daily Tribune. Where did Spider-Man go? The absence of heroes in the hostage crisis. In this hostage crisis, we cannot help but ask, where are those heroes who boast themselves as the city's guardians? When a real crisis arrives, Spider-Man has vanished without a trace. Is it a lack of capability, or do they simply not care about the life and death of innocent civilians? Lin Yi sneered. Written quite well, don't write next time. Just as Lin Yi wanted to call Peter, a commotion suddenly reached his ears. He raised his head and saw everyone on the street stop walking, tilting their heads up to look at the large screens placed on the surrounding tall buildings. On the screens, the Daily Bugle was broadcasting live coverage of this kidnapping news. The footage showed the outside of a certain warehouse, with many police cars and SWAT vehicles surrounding it, and helicopters hovering in the air, but there was still no sign of a forced entry. Another one is dead, someone in the crowd exclaimed. Lin Yi looked at the screen, where a corpse covered with a white cloth was being carried away into the distance. Many of the surrounding passers-by covered their mouths, and some simply turned away, not daring to look. Oh God, this is terrifying. A woman wearing professional attire tightly gripped the bag in her hand, her face turning pale. I passed by there just yesterday, if I had been a little later. I heard those people specifically capture passers-by, they don't pick at all. A middle-aged man nearby lowered his voice, his tone full of fear. Hell's Kitchen can't be visited at all right now, who knows if those lunatics will keep capturing people. Where is Spider-Man? Where is the Punisher? Aren't they supposed to protect New York? Why aren't they here yet? Exactly. Those heroes usually make a big fuss, how come they are nowhere to be found at a critical moment? I heard, those people are going straight for Spider-Man. If they hadn't provoked those criminal organizations, these innocent people wouldn't have been kidnapped. The discussions in the crowd grew louder and louder, fear and anger intertwining. The footage on the screen switched again, this time to J. Jonah Jameson's studio. The old man was spitting as he faced the camera, poking his finger at the desk, and speaking in sharp words. Spider-Man, and the Punisher, and now a delivery guy has appeared as well. These 3 are simply the tumor of New York. Public hazards to the city. If they didn't go provoke those criminal organizations, would those innocent civilians have been kidnapped? I've said it long ago, Spider-Man is just a threat wearing red and blue spandex. He's a public enemy. These people aren't heroes, they're disasters. They should all be arrested. Hey, this old man. Lin Yi's mouth twitched uncontrollably. Previously, he only targeted Peter Parker the Spider-Man, but this time, good grief, even he and Frank got dragged into it. You just wait for me. Once I make it big in the future, I'll buy out the Daily Bugle and make you walk around wearing Spider-Man's outfit every single day. Don't look down on me just because I'm delivering food right now. 30 years east of the river, 30 years west of the river, never bully a young man for being poor. Wait, that's not right. Making him wear Spider-Man's clothes seems like it would be a reward for him, right? Lin Yi shook his head, casting the messy thoughts in his mind aside. At this moment, someone in the crowd began to echo, he's right. If it weren't for those so-called heroes messing around blindly, those innocent people wouldn't have suffered. Exactly. What heroes? I think they're just troublemakers. Stay far away when you see Spider-Man from now on, don't get implicated. Lin Yi sighed inwardly. Human hearts, they're just so complicated. Peter has helped you guys solve so many dangers, yet just because of one incident, he's being looked down on in all sorts of ways again. Truly worthy of being New York's friendly neighborhood citizens. Still, there were people holding an optimistic attitude. What do you guys know? Spider-Man will definitely go save them. Spider-Man is the best. Have you forgotten the good deeds Spider-Man has done, you stupid guys? Before Lin Yi could finish his emotional sigh, Peter's call came through. Peter's suppressed voice came from the other end of the phone. Lin, did you see the news? I saw it. Right now, the large screens around me are playing it on rotation. Remembering something, Lin Yi added, Peter, don't get too emotional, otherwise you'll lose control again. Peter took a few deep breaths and continued. Don't worry, I know. I'm getting ready to go save them. Lin Yi quickly said. Don't go by yourself, go to Frank's safe house to gather first. He could already tell from the live broadcast footage that the place where the incident occurred was one of the Hand's strongholds. It must be a trap specially set up by the Hand, and capturing these hostages was also meant to lure them over. If Peter went alone, he might be swarmed and attacked. Those ninjas from the Hand were not easy to deal with, and there was also an expert hidden behind the scenes who could launch energy attacks. But if we don't go now, more innocent people will be killed. There was already a hint of anger in Peter's tone. They were kidnapped precisely because of us. We can't just ignore them. Listen, Peter, Lin Yi explained very calmly. This is a trap, specifically waiting for us to jump in. Even if it's a trap, I still have to go. Didn't you also say that with great power comes great responsibility? Lin Yi was stunned. Peter Parker was still that kind-hearted Spider-Man overflowing with a sense of justice. His 4-year journey of solitude still made him steadfastly uphold this responsibility. I didn't say we aren't going, it's that we'll prepare thoroughly and go together. Have you forgotten that we are the invincible duo of queens? Plus Frank, no trap can trap us. Peter's voice finally stabilized. I understand. I'll go to the safe house to find Frank right now. Wait for me, Peter. I'll be there right away too. Hanging up the phone, Lin Yi shoved his phone into his pocket, twisted the throttle, and the little e-bike carved a yellow and black afterimage across the street. Triggered emergency quest. Rescue the kidnapped hostages. Quest objective. Rescue all kidnapped civilians within the time limit. Failure penalty. Hostage death, massive decrease in reputation. Success reward. Pending. System prompt. High-risk ambush detected, enemy configuration. Tombstone, tarantula, boomerang, several ninjas of the Hand. Recommendation. Make thorough preparations and act with caution. What the? Looking at the system prompt, Lin Yi was startled. How did Tombstone escape? And where did tarantula and boomerang pop out from? It seems they have teamed up with those ninjas of the Hand. No wonder they're so arrogant. Daring to kidnap and make threats, turns out they felt they were hot stuff again. Among these people, he had already fought with Tombstone and the ninjas of the Hand, but he hadn't had any contact with Tarantula and Boomerang yet. And on his side, there was only himself, Peter, and Frank. This battle wasn't going to be easy to fight. However, the only thing worth rejoicing about was that the system prompt didn't mark anyone else, which meant that energy releasing expert was probably not there. The little e-bike sped like the wind all the way, arriving at the safe house in just over 10 minutes. Lin Yi pushed open the door. Peter had already arrived, standing to the side and tidying up his web shooters. Yesterday, his bodily genes had undergone changes once again, and he could actually produce web fluid inside his body, but it was very unstable, so he could only continue using web shooters. His expression was somewhat solemn, obviously still worried about those hostages. Lin Yi walked over and patted his shoulder. Don't think too much, let's just rescue the people first. Peter nodded and made an, okay, gesture toward Lin Yi. Frank walked out of the arsenal, his whole body hung with all sorts of equipment. His tactical vest was bristling with magazines, 2 pistols were tucked at his waist, an assault rifle was slung across his back, and a few flashbangs and smoke grenades were strapped to his legs. He was holding 2 submachine guns in his hands. The whole person looked like a mobile armory. Lin Yi whistled. Big brother Frank, are you going to war like this? Frank didn't say anything, only handing over a submachine gun. Hold this. Although Lin Yi had formidable physical stats, reaching the peak of human condition, along with abilities like web shooting and spider sense, guns were much easier to use, not to mention everyone wanted to shoot a gun. Lin Yi took the submachine gun, weighed it in his hands, and found it quite heavy. Alright, then let's set off immediately. With that, he put on his takeout combat suit. The 3 of them didn't waste any words, hurrying towards the scene without stopping. The police cordoned off the entire affected block. Sirens blared endlessly. All the police and civilians looked from afar outside the cordon at the warehouse where Tombstone was located. Quite a few people were live streaming with their phones, the families of the kidnapped victims were crying, and some were angrily shouting at the police. 3 people are already dead. A middle-aged woman cried out in a breakdown, my husband is still inside, I beg you to save him. Why aren't the police going in to save people yet? They don't dare. Those madmen said they'll kill all the hostages immediately if there's a forceful assault. What about Spider-Man? What about the Punisher? Aren't they supposed to protect New York? Why aren't they here yet? An atmosphere of despair enveloped the crowd. Just then, a red and blue figure suddenly swung across the sky. That is Spider-Man. The crowd instantly erupted. Spider-Man is here. There's hope. There's hope. Spider-Man will definitely save them. Excited shouts rose one after another. The originally despairing atmosphere was instantly shattered, and hope reignited on people's faces. Peter swung through the air and landed directly on the warehouse roof. At the same time, in the shadows on the side of the warehouse, 2 figures silently sneaked in. Lin Yi and Frank acted separately, sneaking into the interior of the warehouse from 2 different directions. The warehouse was extremely dim, with only a few dilapidated light bulbs flickering. More than a dozen hostages were tied up in a corner, shivering. Some had long since passed out from fright. The others wept softly while trembling all over. These guys who kidnapped them really dared to kill. The previous 3 were shot right in front of them, and their blood splattered all over them. Tombstone stood on the 2nd floor of the warehouse, watching everything below, a chilling smile radiating across his face. Suddenly, he heard a bang of landing coming from the roof. They're finally here. He looked towards the roof and shouted gloomily, Tarantula, Boomerang, get ready to welcome our guests. Tarantula walked out from the shadows. Boomerang was twirling his darts on the side. Dozens of ninjas from the hand swarmed out from all over the warehouse, holding katanas and ready for action. Peter kicked a big hole in the roof with one kick, then jumped down, landing directly in the center of the warehouse. His gaze swept over the tied-up hostages, his heart tightening. Those innocent people. He took a deep breath, suppressed the anger in his heart, and looked up at Tombstone on the 2nd floor. Tombstone, let them go. Tombstone sneered. Let them go. Fine, I'll definitely let them go, but only after you're dead. He waved his hand. Do it. More than 20 ninjas instantly pounced from all directions, their katanas flashing with a cold glint in the air. Peter's spider sense triggered instantly. He leapt up fiercely, whipped out webs to entangle 2 ninjas, and kicked another one flying. But the number of ninjas was too great, surging up wave after wave. Right at this moment, the side door of the warehouse was kicked open. Frank rushed in holding a submachine gun, frantically pulling the trigger at the ninjas. Bullets poured out towards the ninjas. Caught off guard, quite a few ninjas were shot and fell into pools of blood. Watching Peter and Frank engage the ninjas, Lin Yi sneaked in directly from another direction, making his way near the hostages amidst the chaos. "Don't be afraid, I'm here to save you," he said in a low voice, simultaneously using a knife to cut the ropes binding the hostages. "Hurry up, run over that way." The hostages shivered as they ran outward, but as soon as they reached the door, their path was blocked by several ninjas. Seeing they couldn't get out, they had to obediently crouch back down. "Want to run?" Tarantula darted out from the shadows, bone spurs fiercely stabbing towards Lin Yi. Lin Yi sidestepped and dodged, the bone spur grazing past his shoulder, leaving a trail of blood. Holy crap! He clutched his shoulder, shooting a web backhanded in an attempt to entangle Tarantula. But Tarantula's speed was astonishing, dodging it directly. "Pretty interesting. You actually have the same ability as Spider-Man." Tarantula smiled sinisterly as the bone spurs stabbed over once more. Lin Yi slid to dodge, casually picking up a dead ninja's katana from the ground, and heavily smashed it onto Tarantula's bone spur. With a loud clang, the katana snapped in response. "You monster, your body is pretty tough." Lin Yi took a step back and continued speaking. "Brother, with so many spikes stuck on your back, doesn't it poke your butt when you go to the bathroom?" Host taunt detected, amplification triggered. Mental interference effect. Enemy's attention distracted for 2 seconds. Tarantula was stunned for a moment, his movements clearly slowing by half a beat. Seizing the opportunity, Lin Yi shot out 2 webs, directly entangling Tarantula's legs. Tarantula lost his balance and crashed to the ground. "Take this." Lin Yi kicked him right in the chest, sending him flying and smashing into a pile of cargo crates. But before he could even catch his breath, several darts were already spinning and flying towards him. "Careful." Frank, who was still shooting in the distance, saw this and immediately shouted a warning. Lin Yi's spider sense triggered, and he immediately squatted down. The darts flew past his scalp, nailing into the wall and sparking. Boomerang stood in the distance, throwing a few more darts from his hand while smirking. "Kid, quick reflexes. That's for sure. I'm a takeout delivery guy, how could my reflexes not be fast?" Lin Yi stood up, shooting webs to knock down the darts. "Your darts spin so flashily, you must have trained in acrobatics at a circus, right?" Host taunt detected, amplification triggered. Taunt effect. Enemy's rage value increased, attack accuracy decreased by 10%. Boomerang's expression sank, and the darts in his hand whipped out continuously, you're courting death. Several darts flew in from different angles. Lin Yi dodged left and right, shooting webs continuously to knock down the darts one by one. But right at this moment, Tombstone standing on the second floor pulled a dirty trick. He picked up a shotgun and suddenly fired a shot at Lin Yi, shouting at the same time. "Takeout delivering fool, go to hell." Fortunately Lin Yi dodged in time, avoiding injury. Tombstone. He raised his head, looking at the 2-meter-plus behemoth on the second floor. Tombstone grinned ferociously, reloading the shotgun. "You guys ambushed me last time, let's see how you can beat me this time." He pulled the trigger, and there was another bang. Lin Yi dodged to the side while whipping out a web to shoot towards the second floor. But Tombstone was prepared, grabbing the web and giving it a fierce tug. Lin Yi's entire body was yanked flying, cutting an arc through the air and heavily smashing into the ground. Lin Yi crawled up from the ground, feeling as though every bone in his body was about to fall apart. Good grief, that really hurt. If not for the peak physique given by the system, he would have either died from that hit or been bedridden for more than half a year. Rubbing his lower back, he looked up to see Tombstone jumping down from the second floor, his over 2-meter-tall physique crashing heavily onto the ground and causing it to tremble slightly. "I didn't expect a stinky delivery guy like you to actually be able to dodge bullets." Tombstone had originally planned to use a gun to deal with the seemingly most ordinary Lin Yi first, and then take care of Spider-Man and the Punisher. Unexpectedly, Lin Yi dodged 2 shots in a row, so he tossed the gun aside and intended to engage in hand-to-hand combat. "Last time I was knocked flat by you using a textile machine, but this time I've long since cleared the surrounding area." Let's see what other tricks you have up your sleeve. Tombstone grinned maliciously and closed in step by step, each step causing the ground to thump loudly. You have a gun, and I have a gun too. Unflustered, Lin Yi took the submachine gun given to him by Frank out of the system space, and without a word, pulled the trigger towards Tombstone. Seeing a submachine gun suddenly appear in Lin Yi's hands, Tombstone was greatly startled and hurriedly rolled to the side to dodge. Despite being over 2 meters tall, he was quite agile in that split second. Rat-tat-tat. Most of the bullets missed, and only a small fraction hit Tombstone's body. However, the bullets hitting him were like hitting a steel plate, clattering onto the ground without causing even a shred of damage to Tombstone. Huh, bullets are useless against me, what was I dodging for? Tombstone only then snapped back to reality. He was invulnerable and completely unafraid of bullets, he had simply been startled by the submachine gun suddenly appearing in Lin Yi's hands just now. He immediately got up and rushed rapidly toward Lin Yi, his fist striking straight at Lin Yi's face. Lin Yi hurriedly raised the submachine gun to block. But Tombstone's strength was shockingly immense, smashing the submachine gun directly to pieces. Lin Yi himself was also sent flying, crashing heavily against the wall and making him grimace in pain. I'm falling apart here. Host detected triggering an internet meme. Meme amplification takes effect. Temporary buff. Pain tolerance increased by 50%, lasting for 2 minutes. A warm current surged through his entire body, and the pain on him immediately lessened quite a bit. Lin Yi steadied his footing and looked at the step-by-step approaching Tombstone, inwardly crying out in dismay. This guy's strength and defense were too freakish, fighting him single-handedly was simply not an option. On the other side, Peter's situation was not optimistic either. Over 20 ninjas surrounded him tightly, with katanas and kunai slashing in from all directions, leaving him with barely any room to dodge. With a kick, he sent 2 ninjas flying, but even more ninjas swarmed up. They were endless, simply endless. At this moment, Tarantula, who had been kicked away by Lin Yi, also recovered. Spotting the opportunity, he darted out from behind Peter, his bone spurs fiercely stabbing toward Peter's back. Peter gave a start and barely managed to dodge by turning to the side, but his shoulder was still slashed open, blood seeping out. Poisonous. Watching the wound turn dark, he gritted his teeth and looked at Tarantula. Tarantula smiled sinisterly. That's right, let you taste my tarantula's venom as well. With that, he rushed toward Peter again. Peter flicked out a web to entangle Tarantula and smashed him toward the wall, but Tarantula actually snapped the web midair and backhanded a bone spur toward Peter's leg. Peter hurriedly retreated, but his calf was slashed by a ninja's kunai right beneath his feet. The wound was not deep, but it still slowed his movements by half a beat. Just at this moment, Boomerang, seeing Lin Yi being pinned down by Tombstone, broke away and flicked out 3 flying darts, which flew toward Peter from different angles. Peter's spider sense triggered, and he violently rolled to the side. Tarantula's venom made his reaction slower. The darts flew past grazing his body, with one of them tearing his suit and leaving a bloody scratch under his ribs. Holding his wound and gasping heavily, Peter felt his stamina depleting rapidly. Frank had likewise fallen into a hard battle. He held his submachine gun and fired frantically, but these ninjas were too freakish. When bullets were fired over, they used katanas to block and easily dodge them, and would even use smoke to cover themselves and disappear from where they stood. Ninjas. Frank cursed, the magazine of the submachine gun in his hand already emptied. Just as he was about to change magazines, 3 ninjas darted out from the smoke, their katanas slashing toward his neck. Frank raised the submachine gun to block. With 3 crisp sounds of clang, 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 the blades struck the body of the gun. He kicked one of them flying and backhanded the butt of the gun into another's face, but the 3rd ninja had already circled behind him, a katana stabbing toward his heart from the back. Frank turned sharply, grabbed the opponent's wrist, and gave it a hard twist. With a crack sound, the ninja's arm was directly snapped, letting out a miserable scream. But even more ninjas had surrounded them, smoke grenades exploding one after another, and the entire warehouse instantly filled with smoke. These fools, playing dirty, huh? Frank reloaded his magazine and fired wildly into the smoke, but couldn't hit a few people at all. Furthermore, he had very few bullets left. Lin Yi was forced back repeatedly by Tombstone, having already taken several hits on his body. Although the meme buff alleviated the pain, his stamina was being consumed severely. He snatched a glance at the situation of Peter and Frank, and his heart immediately sank. All three of them were being suppressed and beaten. The situation was too terrible. Right at this moment, a muffled groan suddenly came from Peter's side. One of Tarantula's bone spurs fiercely stabbed into Peter's shoulder, directly tossing him flying and crashing him against the warehouse wall. Peter! Lin Yi shouted and was just about to rush over when he was smashed in the chest by a punch from Tombstone, sending him flying backward and crashing onto the ground. Struggling to crawl up, he saw Peter sliding down from the wall, curled up on the ground and trembling violently all over. Tarantula's spider venom stimulated the unstable spider genes within Peter's body. Peter's fingertips began to sprout dark cyan-black spikes, strange patterns appeared on his skin, and a beast-like low roar came from his throat. The spider genes were about to go out of control. No, don't, not now. Peter gritted his teeth, desperately trying to suppress the restless genes inside his body. But the more he suppressed it, the more fierce the mutation became. The spikes began to spread to his arms and shoulders. Suddenly, Peter snapped his eyes open. His eyes turned pitch black, appearing extremely eerie. Roar! A berserk roar burst forth from Peter's throat. Lin Yi's heart skipped a beat. This was bad. If Peter completely went berserk, not only would he and Frank have to fight Tombstone and the others, but they would also have to find time to subdue Peter. Wouldn't that be completely doomed? Seeing this scene, Tombstone laughed wildly. Ha 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 ha. Spider-Man is out of control. This is going to be even more interesting. Intending to strike while the iron was hot and finish them off while they were down, he immediately waved his hand and ordered, "Everyone, while Spider-Man is down, take out that delivery guy and the Punisher first." Tarantula, Boomerang, and a large group of ninjas immediately swarmed forward, pouncing toward Lin Yi and Frank. Frank's bullets had already run out, and he could only use his rifle as a club to barely fend off the ninjas' attacks. He smashed the butt of his gun into a ninja's face, but the attacks from Tarantula and Boomerang already had him overwhelmed. Lin Yi's situation wasn't any better either. Tombstone plus a dozen or so ninjas forced him back repeatedly, making it impossible for him to spare any energy to help Peter. "Lin, what should we do now?" Fighting and retreating, Frank came to Lin Yi's side and asked back to back with him. Lin Yi hadn't expected that relying on the three of them would still make the fight this difficult, nor had he expected Peter to suddenly lose control. Glancing at Peter, he gritted his teeth and said, "Hold on, Frank, let's wait until Peter stabilizes before talking." Just at this critical juncture, a sound suddenly came from the warehouse roof. A red figure jumped down from the hole, two short batons cutting red afterimages in the air, and with a few pa 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 sounds, sent several ninjas besieging Lin Yi and Frank flying away. Lin Yi was stunned and looked up. The newcomer wore a dark red tight combat suit, with two interweaving DD symbols on the chest, wearing a red mask on his head, holding two short batons in his hands, and exuding a sharp momentum all over. "Daredevil, I was wondering why Hell's Kitchen was so lively. Turns out you guys are the ones causing trouble." Daredevil's voice was deep and powerful. With a twist of his baton, he charged straight into the group of ninjas. After a few muffled thuds, another 5 or 6 ninjas were sent flying, lying on the ground unable to move. Lin Yi's eyes lit up. Man, what a powerful reinforcement has arrived. Although Daredevil could not see, his other senses were at a super level, perfectly countering the freakish ghost ninjas of the hand. Some were happy while others were worried, and upon seeing this, Tombstone's expression changed, another one who likes to wear tights. Daredevil's agility was astonishingly fast, his batons wielded so tightly that not a breath of wind could get through, and every movement was extremely precise, as if he could see every single flaw of the enemy. The ninjas, smoke bombs and invisibility techniques completely failed in front of him. He was like a precise combat machine, and wherever he went, ninjas fell to the ground one after another. Taking advantage of everyone's attention being drawn to Daredevil, Lin Yi seized the moment with a big leap and arrived by Peter's side. "Peter, drink the serum. Drink the serum quickly." Peter was curled up on the ground, trembling all over, and the spikes had already spread to his neck. His consciousness was struggling on the edge of a rampage, unable to hear any sounds from the outside world at all. Lin Yi was anxious but dared not approach easily, fearing he would stimulate Peter again, so he could only anxiously shout out to Peter. No, I can't lose control. Countless images flashed through Peter's mind. Uncle Ben's last words, Aunt May's smile, the backs of MJ and Ned, the trust of Lin Yi and Frank. With great power comes great responsibility. Peter clenched his teeth tightly, using all his willpower to suppress the restless genes. His hand trembled as he pulled out the stabilizing serum given to him by Banner, aggressively pouring it down his throat. The blue liquid flowed down his throat, and a cool sensation instantly spread throughout his body. But the restlessness of the genes did not subside immediately, instead, it counterattacked even more fiercely. Ah! Peter let out a painful roar. The spikes all over his body began to tremble violently, and blue-black patterns twisted and spread across his skin. His consciousness pulled back and forth between a rampage and sanity, as if two voices were slaughtering each other in his mind. Give up. Let the power take over everything. No, I am Peter Parker. I am Spider-Man. I cannot lose control. You are just a monster. No, I still have my own responsibilities. I still have people to protect. I cannot fall here. Peter's willpower was as hard as steel, and he firmly grasped the last straw of sanity, desperately suppressing the violent genes within his body. Slowly, the spikes began to retract bit by bit, and his pitch-black eyes also returned to their original appearance. Who? Peter breathed heavily, his whole body soaked in sweat, but his eyes had already regained clarity. He did it. Relying on his own willpower, he suppressed the rampaging genes. Lin Yi breathed a sigh of relief. Seeing Peter recover, he set his mind at ease, turned his head to look at Tombstone, and his gaze instantly turned sharp. All right, now it's time to settle the score. Lin Yi stood up and came before Tombstone. Although his body was already covered in scars, his gaze was exceptionally firm. Die, Tombstone. Just you. Tombstone sneered, smashing a fist over. Lin Yi sidestepped to dodge, took a deep breath, and shouted out a sentence. I want to fight 100 of them. Detected that the host has triggered a popular internet meme, the meme buff takes effect. Temporary buff. All attributes increased by 1.8x, taunt effect maxed out, enemy morale decreased by 20%, lasting for 3 minutes. A majestic power surged through his whole body, and Lin Yi felt that his strength, speed, and reflexes had all improved by a large margin. He suddenly exerted force with his feet, his figure moving so fast that it left afterimages as he charged straight toward Tombstone. Bang! A punch smashed into Tombstone's face, actually knocking him back 2 steps. Tombstone covered his face with an expression of disbelief. How is that possible? Lin Yi grinned. I said before, delivery guys are also very good at fighting. Pressing his advantage, his figure shuttled around Tombstone like lightning, every single punch landing solidly on flesh. 3 consecutive punches smashed into Tombstone's chest, abdomen, and chin, with each punch carrying astonishing force. Tombstone was beaten into retreating repeatedly, blood oozing from the corner of his mouth, and the sound of ribs breaking came from his chest. You delivery fool! How dare you hurt me! Tombstone roared angrily, swinging his fist at Lin Yi once more. But Lin Yi's speed was too fast. He sidestepped to dodge and smoothly kicked Tombstone on the knee. With a crisp, crack, sound, Tombstone dropped to one knee. Taking the opportunity, Lin Yi delivered an uppercut, fiercely smashing it onto Tombstone's chest. Tombstone let out a painful muffled grunt, blood spewed from his mouth, and at least 3 ribs in his chest broke. On the other side, after clearing out the surrounding ninjas, Daredevil still had time to say to Frank. Punisher, long time no see. Frank glanced at him and snorted coldly. What are you here for? Just passing by, helping out along the way. At this moment, Tarantula suddenly rushed toward the 2 of them. Tarantula thrust out his bone spurs, but they were smashed by Daredevil with a baton. What? Tarantula was shaken until his arm went numb, losing his color in great shock. How could this man in red have such huge strength? Pressing his advantage, Daredevil struck down continuously with his batons, forcing Tarantula to retreat repeatedly and making him completely unable to fend them off. Seeing Tarantula suffer a setback, Boomerang immediately prepared to throw darts at Daredevil, but his hand was entangled by a web shot by the recovered Peter. You slashed me just now, now it's time to pay it back. Peter kicked Boomerang in the chest, sending him flying and crashing into the wall. Little did he expect Boomerang to be so unable to take a kick, passing out cold directly. Tombstone lay on the ground, his chest heaving violently, blood continuously gushing out from his mouth. He struggled to raise his head and saw Tarantula being beaten into a steady retreat by Daredevil. Boomerang had already passed out, and there were very few ninjas left. These guys. A trace of fear flashed in Tombstone's eyes. He realized that if this kept going, he was really going to end up dying right here. Tarantula, stop fighting. Retreat. Tombstone struggled to crawl up, holding his chest and shouting towards Tarantula. Hearing this, Tarantula immediately shook off Daredevil's attack and then rushed toward Tombstone's direction. Naturally, Lin Yi could not let them leave and immediately shot out Spider Silk to block them. But it was blocked by the ninjas on the side. The remaining ninjas also entangled the three of them, Peter, Frank, and Daredevil, completely ignoring that they had already been used as scapegoats by Tombstone. The remaining ninjas were naturally no match for the few of them, and were all dealt with in a few quick strokes. But the figures of Tombstone and Tarantula were already nowhere to be seen. These two brats run pretty fast. They let them get away again. Frank swore. Tombstone and Tarantula got away. Lin Yi pointed at Boomerang on the ground. Didn't we leave one behind? With him here, I don't believe we can't find those two. Besides Boomerang, the ground was littered with ninjas, though only a fraction of them were still alive. Frank's bullets were no joke. And seeing so many scumbags, Lin Yi naturally didn't hold back. Who wouldn't want to kill some scumbags? Only Peter and Daredevil merely knocked these ninjas out. As soon as Lin Yi finished speaking, the system's voice rang in his mind right on schedule. Host has completed the emergency mission. Rescue hostages. Basic reward. Agility plus 10, web strength increased by 20%. Additional challenge completed. 0 hostage deaths, defeated Boomerang, obtained Daredevil's assistance, rewards doubled. Obtained. Stamina plus 10, system space expanded to 50 cubic meters. Unlocked new feature. Teamwork buff when fighting side by side with teammates, the entire team's attributes increase by 10%. A series of notifications flashed down, making Lin Yi's eyes light up. Man, this haul was seriously solid. Agility, stamina, web strength, all of them useful for fighting. The teamwork buff was an even better thing. Fighting alongside teammates could boost the whole team's attributes by a notch. Looking at the system's rewards, Lin Yi grinned. He stretched his muscles a bit, turned to look at the hostages in the corner, and instantly wore a look of surprise. The battle just now was so intense. Yet out of these dozen or so hostages, not a single one had died. Looking closely, Lin Yi couldn't help but admire these people's survival wisdom. They were all lying motionless in the corners of the wall. You guys really know how to lay low, huh? Lin Yi couldn't help but make a sarcastic remark. A middle-aged man poked his head out from behind a cargo box, his face still carrying the relief of surviving a catastrophe. That goes without saying. We're longtime residents of Hell's Kitchen. Dodging bullets is just a basic skill. Exactly. With that racket just now, I didn't even dare to breathe while lying there. Another young man also crawled out, patting his chest in lingering fear. Seeing that Lin Yi and the others had won, the hostages crawled out from various corners one after another, acting like it was Christmas, patting each other on the shoulders to celebrate, jumping and leaping around. We survived. Spider-Man and the others really saved us. I told you they would come. The group of people who had been scared out of their wits just moments ago were now full of energy. Lin Yi waved his hand. All right, it's not too late to celebrate after we get out. At this moment, Daredevil put away his billy clubs and walked over towards Frank's side. Frank only then remembered he hadn't introduced Daredevil to Lin Yi and Peter yet. He raised a hand and pointed at Daredevil. This is Hell's Kitchen's famous vigilante. Daredevil, who could possibly not know him? Before Frank could continue introducing, Lin Yi preemptively said, Big brother Frank, you don't need to say it, we know too. This is the famous Daredevil. Not only did he know it was Daredevil, but he also knew that he was precisely Matt Murdock from the Hell's Kitchen law firm. It was just that Matt definitely didn't want others to know his identity as Daredevil. Daredevil was slightly taken aback, his brows twitching beneath the mask. You know me. Hell's Kitchen's guardian, right? A legendary figure in New York. Lin Yi gave a thumbs up, praising him righteously. Daredevil fell silent for a moment, then slowly said, I have heard of Spider-Man, though. He turned to Peter. The friendly neighbor of Queens, you've solved quite a few big troubles in New York these past few years. I've heard your name long ago. Being praised like this, Peter scratched the back of his head somewhat embarrassedly. Ah, thanks. Daredevil turned back to Lin Yi, a hint of puzzlement in his tone. However, I really haven't heard of. You are Lin Yi. He opened his mouth, then thought better of it. It was completely normal for Daredevil not to know him. He hadn't been punishing evil and promoting good alongside Peter for very long, so he definitely couldn't compare to long-established heroes like them. Ahem. Lin Yi fake coughed twice, forced calmness, and waved his hand. I'm just a delivery guy, newly in the industry. It's totally normal that you haven't heard of me. Daredevil nodded thoughtfully. Peter beside him couldn't hold back his laughter, his shoulders shaking. Even Frank, who was always poker-faced, managed a rare twitch at the corner of his mouth. Lin Yi. Fine. He silently turned his head away and dryly changed the subject. All right, stop exchanging pleasantries here. Let's turn this stronghold upside down right now and see if we can dig up anything useful. Peter nodded. Although his complexion was still a bit pale, his eyes had become much clearer. The four of them split up and began rummaging through boxes and cabinets to search this warehouse. Lin Yi groped inward along the corridor, pushing open old, dilapidated iron doors one by one. Most of the rooms were empty, containing only some abandoned equipment and sundries. Until he pushed open the innermost door. The room was terribly dim, with only a broken light bulb swaying. A scrawny figure was curled up in the corner, hands tied behind their back, mouth taped shut, a pair of eyes looking toward the doorway in terror. That was a teenager of 16 or 17, filthy all over, obviously locked up for quite a few days. Lin Yi walked over, tore off the tape on his mouth, and used web fluid to cut the ropes binding his wrists. Don't be afraid, we're here to save you. What's your name? Why were you locked up here? The teenager trembled like a sieve, squeezing out a few words after a long while. My name is Jack. They are people from the Hand. They caught me because I'm a mutant. A mutant. Lin Yi's eyes lit up as he sized him up from top to bottom. You're a mutant. Then what abilities do you have? Jack lowered his head and said hesitatingly. I can make plants grow just a tiny bit faster. But it doesn't seem very useful. Lin Yi. Make plants grow a little faster. This ability was truly useless to the core. No wonder the Hand just kept him locked up without rushing to send him away. They probably figured this ability couldn't squeeze out any value, yet weren't willing to let a mutant slip away. Alright, stop thinking about that, you're safe. Lin Yi patted his shoulder. Come with me, bro will get you out of here. He led Jack out of the room, running right into Peter and Frank coming from the other end. Lin, did you find anything on your end? Peter asked. Picked up a mutant teenager. Lin Yi pointed to Jack behind him. His ability is making plants grow a little faster. He lowered his voice and added, pretty useless. Peter glanced at Jack, his eyes carrying sympathy. Regardless of whether the ability is useful or not, he shouldn't have been captured. Well said. Lin Yi nodded. At this moment, Daredevil walked out from deep within the corridor, holding a thick stack of documents in his hands, his expression somewhat solemn. You guys take a look at this. Lin Yi took it and flipped through it, his brows instantly furrowing. The documents were densely packed with research records about mutants, ability types, genetic structures, energy fluctuations, experimental data, everything was complete. These fool ninjas are actually using mutants for research. Lin Yi cursed and continued flipping down. Turning to the back, his movements suddenly stopped. On one document, several large words were prominently printed, Cooperation Agreement with the Department of Damage Control. Department of Damage Control. Lin Yi's eyes instantly narrowed. He quickly skimmed through the contents of the file, and the more he read, the more alarmed he became. It turned out that the Hand had hooked up with the Department of Damage Control long ago. As an official institution, the Department of Damage Control outsourced this dirty work to the Hand for some mutants that were inconvenient to capture publicly. Taking advantage of this relationship, the Hand extracted plenty of resources from the officials and even gained protection. However, even more sinister was that old fox Madame Gao. While secretly handing over the captured mutants to the Department of Damage Control to fulfill her quota, she was also conducting secret research on her own, intending to crack the abilities of mutants for her own use. To put it bluntly, both sides were just using each other, each harboring their own evil intentions. These people are truly ruthless. Lin Yi showed that stack of files to Frank and Peter, saying, the collusion between the underworld and the authorities, this routine really can't be escaped anywhere. Frank glanced at the file, his expression so gloomy it could drip water. Department of Damage Control. A bunch of beasts wearing official skins. Daredevil said coldly, I long suspected that the Hand had official forces backing them up, but I didn't expect even the Department of Damage Control to get mixed up in this. Alright, we've got everything, let's pull back. Lin Yi walked over to the unconscious Boomerang, tied him up tightly with spider silk, and hoisted him onto his shoulder. Let's take this guy back and interrogate him, maybe we can squeeze something out of him. He turned his head to look at Jack. You're coming with us too. Staying here is too dangerous. In case any of the Hand's men sneak back, you're bound to get dragged back. Jack nodded repeatedly, following closely behind Lin Yi step by step. Daredevil put away his short sticks and said his farewells. I still have business in Hell's Kitchen, so I'll take my leave first. You guys take these files, and if you need any help, you can look for me anytime. Thanks, big bro Daredevil. Lin Yi waved at him. Daredevil gave a nod, turned and flashed out through the side door, disappearing into the night. Walking to the entrance, Lin Yi stopped, turned back, and said to Peter. Peter, you stay behind. Huh. Peter was taken aback. Take these hostages out and tell the police and the public outside that the Hand ninjas inside have already been cleaned up by us. Lin Yi said, let them set their hearts at ease. Peter nodded. Understood. Lin Yi and Frank, bringing Boomerang and Jack, silently left the warehouse through the side door. Peter turned back into the warehouse and waved at the group of hostages. Everyone, you are safe now, come out with me. The hostages instantly cheered, a crowd surrounding Peter and marching grandly toward the main entrance. Outside the cordon, the police, media reporters, and onlookers were still waiting in a massive crowd. Why has it gone quiet? What on earth is the fight like inside? Spider-Man and the others wouldn't have gotten into trouble, right? There was chatter in the crowd, and the atmosphere was anxious and oppressive. Right at this moment, the warehouse door opened with a creak. A red and blue figure walked out, followed by a dozen or so ragged yet emotionally excited hostages. It's Spider-Man. The hostages. The hostages have all come out. They succeeded. The crowd instantly exploded. Spider-Man. Spider-Man. So awesome. Everyone has been rescued. Long live Spider-Man. The cheers were deafening, the camera flashes flickered endlessly into a sheet of light, and reporters held up microphones, pushing forward like crazy. Spider-Man, how did you rescue the hostages? Have the thugs inside all been subdued? Where did that delivery hero and the Punisher go? Facing the camera, Peter spoke in a calm tone. The thugs inside have all been subdued, and the hostages have been safely rescued. My companions have already left. They don't really like facing the camera. That's great. Spider-Man is truly reliable. This is a real hero. The public opinion turned around instantly. The crowd that had been cursing just moments ago now wore completely different faces, each giving a thumbs up. I told you Spider-Man is reliable. Where are those people who were cursing him just now? Doesn't your face hurt? Spider-Man saved so many people. Let's see who still dares to speak ill of him. Major media reports also changed their tune overnight. In the live broadcast of the New York Daily, the host's voice cracked with excitement. Viewers, breaking news. Spider-Man, the Punisher, and a mysterious delivery hero have successfully rescued all the kidnapped hostages. This is a textbook rescue operation. The Daily News immediately followed up. Spider-Man has once again proven himself to be the guardian of this city. Facing extremely vicious thugs, they stepped forward bravely to protect the lives of innocent citizens. Only in J. Jonah Jameson's live broadcast room, the old man sat in his chair with a constipated expression, watching the celebratory scenes on the screen, his mouth twitching incessantly. How is this possible? He had originally planned to wait until this matter blew up to viciously blast Spider-Man, but in the blink of an eye, the guy turned into a big hero. His draft was basically written for nothing. The assistant nearby cautiously leaned over. Mr. Jameson, do you think our report should also? All right, I know. Jameson waved his hand irritably and said through gritted teeth. Report along with the other media. Just say Spider-Man this time did okay. He paused and fiercely added, but don't expect me to praise him. The assistant silently rolled his eyes and turned to arrange the report. On the other side, in a safe house in Hell's Kitchen, Lin Yi threw the unconscious Boomerang onto the floor and wrapped him tightly layer upon layer with spider silk. Frank brought over a basin of cold water and splashed it right over his head. Cough, cough, cough. Boomerang woke up abruptly with a start and coughed violently. Opening his eyes, he saw himself tied up like a rice dumpling lying on the ground, surrounded by Lin Yi, Peter, and Frank. You're awake. Lin Yi squatted down in front of him, smiling amiably. Since you're awake, let's chat. Boomerang's expression changed. He struggled hard twice, but didn't budge an inch, and could only grit his teeth and keep silent. Don't be in a rush to be stubborn. Lin Yi said leisurely, you followed Tombstone for so long, you must know a lot of things. For example, why is the hand capturing mutants? Who is behind them? Boomerang's eyes flickered, but he still kept his mouth shut. Frank walked forward coldly, stepped on his wrist, and slowly applied pressure. Ah! Boomerang screamed in pain, cold sweat pouring down his forehead. I'll talk. Lin Yi raised an eyebrow. That's more like it. A wise man submits to circumstances. Boomerang panted heavily and confessed intermittently. I only know the general idea. In the past few days dealing with Boss Tombstone and those ninjas from the hand, I vaguely heard from their mouths. Heard what? They mentioned a person, called Miss Chin. Boomerang said. She seems to be a very formidable figure. I heard she is planning a big event. What exactly it is, I really don't know. Even Tombstone only heard about it from them, so there's even less way I could know. Miss Chin. Lin Yi already had a bold idea in his mind. This person might just be that person who manipulates energy attacks. In Marvel, the one who fits these characteristics seems to be Phoenix Jean Grey. Is there anything else? Lin Yi pressed further. Boomerang shook his head. No more. Really no more. That's all I know. Lin Yi stared into his eyes for a good while, confirming he wasn't lying, before standing up. After tying Boomerang up a few more times with a rope, Frank escorted him into the underground room. This underground room had been modified by Frank. All of its walls, front, back, top, and bottom, were reinforced with reinforced concrete. There wasn't even a window, only a particularly sturdy iron door. Even if Boomerang broke free from the spider silken rope, he wouldn't be able to escape. Unless he suddenly awakened superpowers, smashed open the iron door, or shattered the walls. But that was definitely impossible. Boomerang's mouth was tightly stuffed, leaving only his eyes and nose exposed. He was cowering by the wall, glaring at Lin Yi and Frank. Stop glaring. No matter how hard you glare, flowers aren't going to bloom from it. Lin Yi patted the dust off his hands, turned around, and walked out with Frank. Slamming the iron door shut with a bang. Lin Yi spoke inside through the iron door. Stay obediently. Once we catch Tombstone and figure out the matter regarding Miss Chin, you will be our tainted witness. Who knows, we might even be able to reduce your sentence by 2 years. Muffled sound came from behind the iron door, and it was unclear whether Boomerang was begging for mercy or cursing. But nobody wanted to know. Frank checked the iron door one last time, put the keys into his pocket, and said in a deep voice. Quite a few criminals have been locked up in here. Let's lock him inside for a few days first. There might still be a place where we can use him. Lin Yi nodded, and then the two of them walked out of the underground room together. In the living room, Banner was sizing up the rescued mutant, Jack. Jack cowered on the sofa, timidly looking up at him as well. Their eyes locked in a mutual stare. Banner broke the silent atmosphere first and asked, Jack, are you saying that your mutant ability can make plants grow a bit faster? Jack nodded and said cautiously, yes. Then he looked around, locking his gaze onto a wilted green plant beside the sofa. He extended his fingertips to touch the flower pot. A miraculous scene occurred. That drooping green plant straightened its branches and leaves at a speed visible to the naked eye, its leaves unfolding and shining brightly with a vibrant green. Upon seeing this, Banner exclaimed in wonder. Having been transformed into Hulk by gamma rays, he had studied the super soldier serum and mutations caused by various unexpected situations. This was the first time he had ever seen a mutant who developed superpowers due to the sudden awakening of their own genes. But to be honest, Jack's superpower really wasn't of much use, Banner muttered to himself. But he was still very curious about what made a mutant's gene different, feeling that it was necessary to conduct in-depth research. At this moment, Lin Yi and the others walked back. Compared to Jack's genes, Banner now wanted more to know what had been pried out of Boomerang's mouth. Earlier, when Lin Yi and the others were interrogating Boomerang, Banner had stayed in the inner room studying a new Hulk inhibitor, so he asked, what did you find out? Lin Yi threw himself into the sofa and let out a long sigh. Tombstone and the Hand might just have a temporary cooperative relationship, and Boomerang didn't know much either. We only managed to pry out of him that the Hand has someone called Miss Chin, who is planning something big. Miss Chin. Banner frowned. Never heard of her. Peter on the side took over the conversation and looked at Frank. Big brother Frank, you've clashed with the Hand for so many years, do you know this person? Frank thought for a moment and said, I don't know either. When dealing with the Hand, I've only ever heard that their leaders are called something like the Five Fingers. Among those 5 people, I've only ever seen Madame Gao, that old hag walking with a cane. What Miss Chin, I've truly never heard of the Hand having such a person. At this, Peter and the others all furrowed their brows tightly. Not even Miss Chin's identity was known, only her name. Interrogating Boomerang had been completely pointless. Seeing their expressions, Lin Yi knew it was his turn to step up. Dr. Banner, do you remember the last time you lost control? Banner nodded. He remembered that loss of control far too clearly. After the ninja of the Hand snatched away the Hulk inhibitor device, he had originally still been able to control Hulk, and Hulk didn't have any intention of coming out either. But suddenly, a burst of energy forcibly invaded his psyche from the outside, stirring Hulk into an extreme state of mania. You said at the time that it was because a burst of energy invaded your brain and angered Hulk that Hulk went crazy. Lin Yi looked at Frank and continued. As far as I know, those ninjas from the Hand shouldn't be capable of this kind of psychic energy attack. Could this energy have been released by the mysterious Miss Chin that Boomerang mentioned? Frank nodded, agreeing with Lin Yi's analysis. Lin, what you said makes a lot of sense. Viewed this way, this so-called Miss Chin definitely possesses some extraordinary abilities, otherwise, the Hand's ninjas wouldn't have mentioned her. Banner's expression sank slightly, and he slowly said in a solemn tone. At that time, Miss Chin was not seen at all, which means she was some distance away from us, yet she could still precisely invade my consciousness and successfully anger Hulk. This isn't something an ordinary superpower user can pull off. If Miss Chin really did this, then the Hand won't be so easy to deal with. This type of psychic energy attack was impossible to guard against. With a figure like this around, even if Hulk wasn't forced out, others couldn't avoid being affected and controlled by the psychic energy. This couldn't help but remind Banner of Wanda, who also possessed the ability to control others' minds, and he had witnessed Wanda's terrifying power. Being able to make an entire town fall into the illusions she created. Now another extraordinary being with psychic energy had popped up, and furthermore within a hostile and evil faction like the Hand. This truly was a tricky, major hassle. Peter and Frank also felt quite distressed upon hearing this. They had always fought opponents on a physical level, so where had they ever encountered an enemy on this psychic level? But compared to them, Lin Yi's heart stirred with entirely different thoughts instead. Hard to deal with. That might not necessarily be the case. As a Marvel fan, he knew all too well who Jean Grey was. A core member of the X-Men, though there were no X-Men in this universe yet, the host of the Phoenix Force, yet a tragic figure who was kind to her very bones, but dragged into the abyss by the Phoenix Force. And there was one most important point. That bunch from the Hand were secretly cooperating with the Department of Damage Control to capture mutants, and they themselves were also using mutants as guinea pigs for experiments. You must know that Jean Grey was also a mutant. Under these circumstances, Jean Grey was still within the Hand. Which meant Madame Gao kept this whole affair tightly under wraps, and Jean Grey was kept completely in the dark, knowing nothing about it. If she were to find out about these shady deeds Madame Gao had done, she might just break ties with the Hand and turn around to deal with Madame Gao and the Hand instead. Then it would all depend on whether this Miss Chin truly was Jean Grey. At this moment, a crisp electronic sound suddenly rang out in Lin Yi's mind. Detected that the host triggered a famous scene check-in mission. Persuade Jean Grey. Mission description. Confirm Miss Chin's identity. Find a way to make Jean Grey wake up and stand on the host's side. Basic reward. Distributed after successful persuasion, evaluated based on the persuasion result. Additional challenge. Avoid triggering uncontrollable chain reactions during the persuasion process. Double the reward. Lin Yi was stunned for a moment, and then a wave of wild joy surged in his heart. Persuade Jean Grey. The system actually assigned him a mission to persuade Jean Grey directly. What did this mean? It meant that Miss Chin was none other than Jean Grey. The system would never issue such a mission for no reason. Since the mission had already been issued, his conjecture was basically correct. This is in the bag. Lin Yi gave himself a mental thumbs up, feeling more and more that this move was viable. A mutant capable of mental abilities or even the Phoenix Force, if she could stand on his side. Even if she didn't stand on his side, once she knew that the Hand was conducting mutant experiments, she wouldn't help the Hand deal with him and the others. However, Lin Yi remembered another matter. Why did Jean Grey use a psychic attack to invade Banner and provoke Hulk? With Jean Grey's strength, she shouldn't need to take orders from Madame Gao and the Hand. That meant this was something Jean Grey wanted to do of her own accord. Why on earth did she do this? Or did she have some unspeakable difficulty? And what on earth was that major event? His head hurt. His head hurt. Lin Yi shook his head and gave up thinking about it. He shouldn't waste too much brainpower on it for now. His current mission was to figure out a way to find Jean Grey first. Once he found her, he would know the answers to all these questions. You guys don't have to be too pessimistic either. Big Brother Frank has never heard of the Hand having such a person, so Miss Chin and the Hand might not necessarily have that kind of relationship. Lin Yi had an idea in mind, but Peter and the others were still deeply worried, so he comforted them. Right now, we must first investigate Miss Chin clearly before we can proceed with the next step of the mission. Hearing this, Frank stood up, brought over a stack of documents, and said, if we want to know Miss Chin's detailed identity, we still have to look for her at the Hand's strongholds. The Hand has more than one stronghold in New York. If we wipe out a few more strongholds, we'll eventually find clues about Miss Chin. Lin Yi thought for a moment and nodded, saying, that's right. Let's tie up a few more ninjas and interrogate them. He knew very well that Jean Grey might just be in one of the Hand's strongholds, so he had to continue taking the initiative. Then Lin Yi and Frank began to discuss. Meanwhile, Banner and Peter were not idle either. Hearing that Peter's genes had gone out of control again during the battle, Banner immediately began to examine Peter. Peter obediently sat in the chair and extended his arm. Banner drew some blood and placed it inside the testing equipment. After a few minutes, the expression on Banner's face changed from solemn to surprised, and finally turned into a smile. Peter, the spider genes in your body have already tended to stabilize, and the evolution is half complete. Peter suddenly stood up, his face full of pleasant surprise. Really, Dr. Banner? Look at these data. Banner pointed at the jumping curves on the screen. The restless spider genes in your body have noticeably calmed down, which means your body is gradually accepting this power. If everything goes smoothly, after a little more time, you will be able to completely control it. Peter looked at the screen and said excitedly, that means I won't have to worry about suddenly losing control and going wild in the future. At least you won't have to live in constant fear like before. Banner smiled and patted his shoulder. Your willpower has helped a lot. Being able to suppress the berserk state by yourself is the most crucial step. Peter modestly thanked him. The stabilization serum Dr. Banner gave me also played a huge role. Hearing this, both Lin Yi and Frank were very happy. The good news that Peter's gene evolution was half complete also diluted their worries about Miss Chin just now. After discussing with Frank, Lin Yi increasingly felt that they were somewhat undermanned. The ninjas of the hand were simply too numerous. If Daredevil hadn't rescued the field in time this time, they might have failed. Although Peter's evolution was half complete, it was still hard to guarantee that no unexpected situations would arise. Frank proposed directly pulling Daredevil into their group. After all, there is strength in numbers. Lin Yi felt the same way. Although Daredevil didn't have any superpowers, he was a great fighter and frequently dealt with the ninjas of the hand, possessing a lot of experience. However, Frank embarrassedly stated that although he knew Daredevil, the two didn't have much contact and he didn't know how to find him. Lin Yi, on the other hand, wasn't panicked at all. For others to find Daredevil, it was like looking for a needle in a haystack. Not many people in New York knew Daredevil's true identity. And he only appeared when fighting criminals. Indeed, it wasn't easy to find him. But Lin Yi was different. He knew that Daredevil was actually a blind lawyer at a law firm in Hell's Kitchen. Matt Murdock. During the day, he helped the poor fight lawsuits. At night, he put on his suit to clean up gangsters. If he said it out loud, many people surely wouldn't believe that a blind lawyer was actually the renowned Daredevil. As for the exact location of that law firm, Lin Yi frowned. He couldn't remember the house number very clearly, but the name, Nelson and Murdoch Law Firm, shouldn't be unfamiliar in Hell's Kitchen. Early the next morning, Lin Yi rode his small electric scooter out. Matt's law firm was very famous in Hell's Kitchen, so Lin Yi didn't spend too much effort finding the location. Nelson and Murdoch Law Firm. Lin Yi looked at the name on the door, pretended to be a food delivery guy, pushed open the door, and walked in. Is Attorney Matt here? Your delivery has arrived. The reception desk was empty. Hearing the sound, a head poked out from behind the desk. That was a somewhat plump man wearing a wrinkled shirt, with his tie hanging loosely around his neck and half a sandwich clenched in his mouth. Seeing Lin Yi, his eyes lit up. Matt's delivery. Matt isn't here, but it doesn't matter, just give it to me, I'm starving. Lin Yi. Anyway, this delivery was fake anyway, so Lin Yi handed over the bag of takeout. The man swallowed his sandwich, took the delivery, and introduced himself. I am Matt's good friend Foggy Nelson, and also a partner of this law firm. You don't have to worry about delivering it to the wrong person. Lin Yi only then realized that the person in front of him was none other than Daredevil's good partner, Foggy. Foggy put the delivery aside, slapped his head, and then said very enthusiastically, right, if you ever need legal assistance, you're welcome to come to our firm for a consultation.
Thanks for watching my video. Please like and share it.